Big 12 Today with Ari and James. Monday through Friday, 8A to 11A Eastern Time. Your home for all things Big 12.
And away we go on a Thursday. Happiness is a choice. Thank you for choosing us, along with James Westling. I'm Ari Tepkin. We've got softball super regionals to discuss today. We've got the Big 12 baseball tournament, plus more movement in the Brendan Sorsby saga, and the latest in the November madness in college basketball. How are you, James?
Fantastic. A lot going on. My wife is sidelined. She's on the IR with a stress fracture, so I need some help later on during the show.
You didn't do the 55515?
I tried the 55515. It didn't work. The quantum code that the government put in play, the CIA back in 1977, that project has been discontinued for obvious reasons.
Did not fix the stress fracture.
Didn't fix the foot probs.
How do we ever get a stress fracture? What are we doing?
So apparently over time, and maybe this is what happened to Dean Wade at Kansas State because he had foot probs. Over time, you can just kind of wear on the foot to where it's not one specific incident that's like snap. It's more of just a gradual fracturing of the stress.
Got
a
it.
stress fracture.
It's like the Jacob Reese Stonecutter's Creed.
That's it.
It wasn't the final knock that broke the stone in half, but it was the previous 100 smacks that were the cumulative smacks over time.
You just said the word Creed. It's all connected. I got on a real Creed kick last night. My wife and I went for a drive.
Okay.
With arms wide open.
Can you take me higher?
They had so many bangers.
Yeah.
They became a meme. I don't know why. They were awesome.
Totally.
Creed and Nickelback.
And
Here for
Hoobastank. Yeah, they all sounded like cheap Pearl Jam ripoffs, but I can't imagine why.
Yeah, that no longer exist. They were fantastic. Also, so I send my daughter an audio message every morning.
Poetry in motion, by the way. Can you take me higher?
Just everything. The halftime show, they were phenomenal. But today is my daughter's last day of school.
Okay.
She is in 7th grade.
Big one.
That is a big one.
One more year before high school.
Probably the biggest. Like when you think back to your childhood, what was like the most impactful or most difficult, most challenging, most fight through adversity grade?
All of it.
Every year.
Everyone.
Just stacked on top of another.
It feels like starting in 6th grade.
Was 6th grade elementary or middle school?
Middle school. Yeah. I feel like that's the common, where we live, our elementary school goes through 6, and so it's 7, 8, and gets all weird. But yeah, 6, 7, 8 for me. I mean, I think the transitions going from 5th grade to 6th grade and then 8th grade to freshman.
Yeah.
Those are the toughies.
Yeah, and I didn't realize, like, at the time that our school district growing up was kind of an outlier because middle school was 7th and 8th. 6th grade, you're the king of the castle in elementary school, and then 7th grade hits you like a ton of bricks.
And it's totally the opposite with 6th grade. You're like, he's shaving.
So 6th grade was my 7th grade. 7th grade was very difficult, but she powered through, had a phenomenal year, and just really proud that she made it through without any major issues. I mean, 7th grade is tough, or 6th grade, your first year of middle school, it's like the emotional Hunger Games. There's a lot going on. You're trying to figure out what you're into, new friends, a ton of possibilities, your body's doing weird stuff and changing. So last day of school for her and my kiddos, my stepkids, have one more day, and then summer's here, dude. Are you ready?
Yeah, I don't know. Do I need to be?
I mean, there's just a lot going on. It's
ready
summer.
or not.
Kids are out of school. You have to figure stuff out.
Yeah. No, we've got that rolling along. It's gonna be great. The month of June, I'm basically not gonna see my oldest kid.
Oh, that's right. You're shipping them off for a month, and you're taking a vacation.
So they're going to Naples to stay with their grandparents for 2 weeks. So we're gonna be empty nesters for 2 weeks in June, and then that's when we're going on our trip for a couple days, and then when they come back, it's a few days, and then my oldest son is going to overnight camp for 2 weeks. Yeah.
So you are down to one kid for the full month.
Yes.
Nice.
And no kids for 2 weeks.
Going to be cleaning a lot of closets.
Yeah.
It's a big month.
It's going to be a party every night at the house.
Big month.
Huge. It's like when when you're in high school and your parents go out of town, you throw a party. When you're 40 and your kids go out of town, you throw a party.
Big time. Big time. That is well stated.
So yeah, I'm ready, amped, jacked for the summer. it's funny. The kids, like, when they're younger, like, they get that summer is fun, but they, like, when they're much younger, they don't realize, like, oh, yeah, school's not fun. Like, I shouldn't be excited about this. And then, of course, the parent, like, oh, school's the best. Like, you're going to get older and you have responsibilities and jobs, and there's no summer. But, like, now, like, the kids are fully, like, they've been counting down the hours to the end of school.
Yeah, I don't remember hating school as much as
I'm like, you're
this
in
generation.
first grade. Like, your life gets
Right?
way worse every year after this. Like,
You've peaked, son.
this is it. It doesn't get any better than this.
Embrace it. If you're struggling now, it's all downhill from here.
For the fourth grader, though, it's like, yeah, this kind of, it's tough.
Yeah.
Fifth grade's even tougher. Like, it's, you know what it's about.
Totally. Well, I'm pretty excited to be sitting down for the next 3 hours. The stress fracture has impacted everybody in my wife's life, and at the top of the list would be me.
Yeah, no, that
So
makes
I'm
sense.
very concerned.
You are married to her, so
Got
that,
up
yeah.
and down off the couch probably 37 times last night.
Does she have a belt? Did you give her a bell?
And I'm wearing a leash. Let's not go there.
You don't need that. I'm just so, if you're ever out and about around the house and she needs some help, she needs a bell. So
Yeah,
that James
no,
will
the
come.
bell would be her vocal cords, which are just as intense and striking. Set my nervous system ablaze. So, yeah, we'll be sitting for the next 3 hours.
So
I'm
you've
ready
got to
to
do
dive
the
in.
summer alone, basically, here.
I mean, how much does a stress fracture sideline somebody?
How much can your wife milk it?
Great question. Yeah, she didn't go to work yesterday. She was in bed all day. She was basically bedridden.
Right, like, I'm sure now there's, like, a legit pain and issue, but, like, 2 weeks down the road, you can be like, hey, honey, like, it's stress fracture thing. Let's get over this.
I mean, we're stalling on ordering the boot. Refusing to go to the doctor. Has the boot picked out. I said, order that boot. She's like, it's $45. I said, you just spent $200 on Amazon 3 days ago on batteries. Like, buy the boot. That has skyrocketed to the top of the priority Amazon things we need list. She said, well, I don't want to pay $45 for that. I want to spend $45 on fun stuff.
yeah, of course.
I said,
Who
no,
wants a
you got to
boot?
get that boot.
Plus, she doesn't want to be seen around town wearing the boot, right? Like, let's be honest here.
That's another
lot of questions.
That's another obstacle
Yeah,
that we're working through.
yeah.
So I've got a list of ideas that I can't wait to get your feedback on.
2 weeks from now, you're gonna be like, get the boot.
How we can get her off the bench and back in the game.
It's Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo. Great to have you with us today and every day here on your home for the Big 12. Tune in Big 12 Studios. This is a Three Things Thursday. And on this Thursday, we'll also be breaking down on the road to Arlington UCF football. If you have missed our series, breaking down deep dives into each and every Big 12 program, we are counting up from 16-1 from last year's standings. So we've hit on Oklahoma State, West Virginia, and Colorado so far. UCF will be today, and so we do a deep dive there with our Road to Arlington series centered on UCF. You're not going to want to miss that. We're also going to have Matt Marshall from the Orlando Sentinel on. This is all in the second hour of the show today. But day 2 of the Big 12 baseball tournament in Surprise, Arizona. Baylor and the Batcats. Don't look now, but K-State's won 2 straight. Baylor first. They knock off a BYU team that had been surging a bit, 13-9. The game last night, BYU was in complete control until the 6th inning. There was 2 outs in the 6th inning, nobody on. And then Baylor scores 7 runs over the 6th and 7th innings, including Brady Janusek, who drove in 5 runs for the Bears, including a 3-run homer in that 6th inning that put the Bears in front for good. Ethan Calder for Baylor struck out 8 over 4 2/3 innings in relief, allowing just 2 runs. BYU, by the way, commits 4 errors. They were one of the best fielding teams in the Big 12 this year, 3rd in the Big 12 in fielding percentage at .977. But they had 4 errors in this game, which allowed 5 unearned runs to come across for Baylor. So Baylor advances, and they will take on Kansas this afternoon, the 1 seed in the Big 12 tournament in Surprise. And then the Batcats, 7-0 lead they jumped out to through 4 innings. Got a dominant performance from their starter, Tazwell Butler. Meanwhile, Tommy Lepore, who came into the season as an ace for TCU, was not very good, allowed 2 in the first inning. And the Batcats, K-State, get a win here.
And TCU really needed that one. And Kansas State has had a really up and down season, but they were excited coming into the year. Pete Hughes thought he had a team that could make a deep run. With Baylor and BYU, like we talked yesterday about the growth that we've seen this year from BYU and how they're a sleeping giant, and next year they could be a major player in the spring. last night I felt like was a perfect example of how close they are. You lead 8-6 after 5. Your reliever, Ashton Johnson, was absolutely dealing, and then the wheels fall off, right? 4 errors compounding into 5 Baylor runs in the 6th and the 7th. Like, those things just can't happen in the postseason. And with Kansas State, I know we call them the Batcats, which they've really leaned into, but Tazewell Butler was phenomenal. Retired 11 of the first 12 he faced, had 6 strikeouts during that span. So the Batcats, who did pound out 14 hits, it was the arm of Butler that they really rode. And Kansas State is hot, and we see this in basketball all the time. Teams in the postseason, everything starts clicking, they feel good about themselves, and they make a deep run. So we'll see how far they can go when they just take down the preseason #1 team in the league. TCU was the preseason pick to win this conference, battled injuries all year, and now they're out.
The schedule is as follows for today: 11 a.m. Central, 12 Eastern Time, Oklahoma State and UCF. Then Baylor and Kansas to follow. That's at 2:30 Central, 3:30 Eastern. 6:30 tonight, K-State and West Virginia. And Cincinnati and Arizona State, 2 ranked teams. That's the nightcap tonight from Surprise. Should be a good one because you've got Arizona State in a close home game against a Cincinnati club that's ranked 22nd in the nation. So the teams that receive the double bye all playing today. And you get K-State and Baylor, who have already played twice. So should be an interesting day of baseball today.
Well, in Cincinnati with the most top 100 RPI wins in the country. I mean, they have played a brutal schedule. Younger coach has only been there a few years, has completely revived that program. There's a lot of parallels between Cincinnati and West Virginia, which Kansas State does the Cinderella run in this afternoon when you've got to play a piping hot West Virginia team. Love what Steve Sabins is doing there. They've won 9 of their last 10. That's a tough draw for the Cats, especially a well-rested West Virginia dominant pitching staff.
Meanwhile, in the Super Regionals, Oklahoma State and Nebraska start things tonight. So a Super Regional going tonight between 13th ranked Oklahoma State and 4th ranked Nebraska. What's the most important part about this for Oklahoma State is you may remember Jordy Ball, the former Oklahoma pitcher, who was the Big 12 Freshman of the Year way back when as a freshman. Well, Jordy Ball is now Jordy Fromm as she got married, and she's been with Nebraska. She transferred from Oklahoma after an incredible freshman season to Nebraska and has, in many ways, rewritten the record books for Nebraska softball. Jordy Fromm, the former Jordy Ball, is now 88-15 in her career with a 1.28 ERA and 887 strikeouts over 650 innings across her time at Oklahoma and Nebraska. But that's sort of the subplot to this series between Nebraska and Oklahoma State, because Jordy Fromm, is somebody that Oklahoma State is extremely familiar with because of her dominant season as a freshman at Oklahoma.
Well, and you see Nebraska as that 1 seed in that 49-6 record, and it looks scary. But in this best-of-3 series, which, by the way, like Bolin Stadium's going to be, the roof is coming off in Lincoln. This is the first super regional that Nebraska, even with all their history, has ever hosted in program history. And these 2 teams, Nebraska and Oklahoma State, they just played during an invitational in late February, and they split, and they were super close. Oklahoma State won the first one 2-1 in 11 innings, and then 4-3 Nebraska got the second, and the third, which would have been the championship of that invitational, was rained out. So they've played twice. They split, and now they're in a best-of-3 series, razor-thin margins. Cannot wait to see how Oklahoma State fares.
And Nebraska has won 24 straight. And how about this? In their regionals, Oklahoma State scored 34 runs in their regional. Nebraska allowed 1. So we'll see what's got to give in that series, which starts tonight. That's 2 things. Also, I believe Texas Tech and Florida, that regional starts tonight as well. They all start tonight? I don't know why I thought some of these were on Friday, but yeah, it looks like Arizona State, Texas, May 21st, UCF at UCLA, May 21st, Oklahoma State, Nebraska, and Texas Tech and Florida as well. So 4 teams enter the Super Regionals for softball, and we'll see on tomorrow's show how Game 1 goes across the Big 12. All right, that's 2 things, baseball, softball. The third thing, Brendan Sorsby, Judge Philip Hayes, yes, the one that was photographed. Yeah, like that. as a major Texas Tech fan, he's got 2 degrees from Texas Tech. He has recused himself in the Sorsby lawsuit, which is the right move here. Bloomberg Law's Ryan Atalo had the original report on this. Judge Philip Hayes has recused himself, did not give a reason. I'm sure we could figure out between the lines what that reason is. The replacement to be picked, this via the report from Bloomberg Law, by administrative judge with degrees from A&M and Baylor, but not Tech. Which, this is a smart move. I'm not sure what the impetus is for it beyond like the judge realizing that it's a good move. From the standpoint of you're probably still going to get a friendly judge here that, at least gives you the doubt of, well, he doesn't have 2 degrees from Tech. If you remember the Charles Bediaco case, it was originally saw by a judge who had degrees from Alabama. So when it was then kicked up to the Alabama Supreme Court, it was denied, and I would imagine part of that was because of the assigned judge in that case. So it feels like in some ways maybe there's been some learning from that one in order to react to this one, but we'll see if it has makes any difference.
Yeah, my read on this is Judge Philip Hayes just took the high road. I mean, the headline behind the headline is that. And recusal, you don't have to give a reason. It's not automatic just because a judge happens to have a diploma from the school in question, which is Texas Tech. And I think he also kind of saw the optics and the narrative behind the situation and how that was the story. And when you look at it from his perspective, there's not really any good options. Okay, if he rules in favor of Sorsby, well, the narrative is Homer Judge, Texas Tech fan, just bailed Texas Tech out, right? And if he rules against Sorsby, then it becomes, well, this Tech alum just threw our $5 million quarterback and program under the bus. So I think it's the right move. Love that he stepped away, that he didn't give a reason, and that now there's going to be a more neutral party, which is what our justice system is supposed to be all about. I think it looks really good, not just for him, but also for Texas Tech. Texas Tech isn't up in arms about who's going to be presiding over this case. They feel strong enough that they have a case, regardless of who the judge is, that they can win, which is the camp that I'm starting to lean.
This is Big 12 Today, brought to you by Modelo. And a reminder that if you missed any of our segments or interviews, you can check out the Big 12 Today podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, including our interview yesterday with Brett Yormark, which is available now on the podcast page. You'll hear that interview if you missed it, coming up in about 30 minutes from now, but you can listen to it on demand whenever you want, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also listen to segments. You get a chance to hear our Road to Arlington series as well. It's all part of the podcast page at wherever you get your podcasts or on the TuneIn On Demand. All right, he's James. I'm Ari. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo. On the way next, here's college basketball's latest attempt at some November madness. And is this a compliment or a competition with the Big 12? This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. Big 12 Radio. This is Big 12 Today, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. Along with James Wesley, I'm Ari Tepkin. We are presented by Modelo. Our Road to Arlington series continues today as we're taking a deep dive into UCF football. It's coming up in the next hour, about 40 minutes from now. Plus, Brett Yormark, if you missed our in-depth conversation with him about Redbird Capital, about the college football playoff expansion, all of that coming up in about 15 minutes from now. Last night, CBS Sports' Matt Norlander is reporting that the Diamond Cup is a proposed 8-team pool play event targeting a debut in the 2027-2028 season. According to Norlander, the 8 schools currently in quote-unquote deep discussions include Arizona, Connecticut, Gonzaga, Kansas, Kentucky, Indiana, Michigan, and North Carolina. Indiana feels a bit like a reach, but I digress. Basically, the sell here, as is the case with a lot of these other November tournaments, is equity. There's earning upside if the event becomes a long-term quote-unquote media property. Organizers describe it as the first shared equity alliance in college sports. Under the likely 2-game format for 27-28, schools would receive $2.25 million apiece. A 4-game format for 28-29 would bump that to $3.75. The original pitch at schools making approximately $17 million over the full 3-year contract, contingent on the optimal media rights deal. Now here's where the rubber meets the road. The format is likely to be during Thanksgiving, which would be the exact same time as the Players Era Festival. And as we know, that's a no-go for Arizona and Kansas because of the Big 12's involvement, partnership with the Players Era Festival. Thoughts?
Well, I like it a lot because I think college basketball, having the more premier non-conference tournaments, events, is really good for the sport. And college basketball, there was starting to be kind of this narrative surrounding it that it was a March-only sport and that's when people watched and they didn't care about the regular season. Well, I think over the last few years that has shifted because viewership is up now in the month of February and January with these high-profile conference games than ever before, even right here in the Big 12. So the more marquee non-conference events that college basketball can bring to the table, the better. And I think like the Maui Invitational and all these MTEs that every college basketball power conference school is a part of, they were starting to really lose some of their luster when you had programs like Kansas playing College of Charleston in whatever MTE they're in. And so now, number one, it doesn't hurt them because even a loss in these tournaments counts as a quad 1 or quad 2 game, and it doesn't hurt you in terms of seeding in like big picture for the NCAA tournament. And then it's just more eyeballs on the sport. And when you layer on top of that the revenue generating piece, like we saw with the Players Era, and now potentially this, if it does take off like they think it will by 2030, I think all around it's really good for the sport and magnifies that all these one and dones that are now 2 and done or 3 and done. We only had 71 early entries for the NBA draft. College basketball is leaning into being the best product that it's ever been in the history of the sport.
To your point about the MTEs, or as they're also known, tournaments.
Multi-team events is what we started calling them a few years ago.
I call them tournaments.
Yeah, tournaments.
They've always been called tournaments. The 2025-2026 early season calendar. You ready for this? You sitting down?
Mm-hmm.
There's the Acrisure Series, 20-plus teams in the Coachella Valley Thanksgiving week. The Battle for Atlantis. The Charleston Classic, which last year featured Clemson, Georgia, West Virginia, and Xavier. The Emerald Coast Classic, which featured DePaul, Drake, Georgia Tech, and LSU. The ESPN Events Invitational. The Greenbrier Tip-Off. The Hall of Fame Classic in Kansas City. The Cancun Challenge. Legends Classic. Are you still paying attention?
Oh, yeah.
Baha Mar, Bahamas Championship. The Charleston Shriners Classic. And dozens of others. The total picture, there are approximately 30 to 50 MTEs, or as they're commonly referred to, tournaments, ranging from true blue blood events drawing 2 to 4 million TV viewers down to logistics-only events drawing fewer viewers than a typical mid-major conference game. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting because, like, the Battle for Atlantis is an example here. That used to be a huge event.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, the Battle for Atlantis featured Colorado State, Western Kentucky, VCU, and Wichita State, amongst other teams, right? So the luster is gone. So in some ways, you've got these new tournaments that are propping up that are displacing the Maui Invitational and the Battle for Atlantis. And the draw for them over those used to be like, hey, come bring your team out to the Bahamas, or come bring your team out to Maui. And now it's, hey, you can have an equity stake in this, or get paid out, or have your players get paid out. I guess I'm sort of, I agree with your sentiment. However, I'm also a little, I don't know, like, I'll believe it when I see it. I'm a little pessimistic. Like, so what's really interesting is the 4 million viewers, the Champions Classic, which is held annually, featuring Michigan State and Kansas and Kentucky and Duke.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the highest viewership number that ever did was close to 4 million in 2013. That tournament has not seen anything close to that. 2 million's the closest they've gotten since then, which is interesting because now you factor in some of the streaming numbers, and those numbers should be even overinflated, but they're not. So I guess I'm kind of curious what the expectations are from an audience perspective. And obviously, the more blue bloods you have, right, the more audience you're going to be drawing in. That's sort of the idea of the Players era. I think this is an opportunity for Kansas or Arizona to sort of earn some Duke money here, which is just earn some extra money playing in this tournament. But
right.
It's not going to come at the expense of the Players era. If they're at the same time, Kansas and Arizona are going to the Players era because that's the one that the Big 12 is involved with, which includes a 15% equity stake for the Big 12 conference.
Well, and I'm trying to – I don't see anything in the pitch deck, which is what CBS Sports and Matt Norlander got their hands on, that mentions television partner. Most MTEs right now are owned and operated by ESPN. Duke has already said they wouldn't participate in the Diamond Cup because of their new deal with Amazon. There's a direct conflict. There would be a direct conflict with Kansas and Arizona and the Players era. Now, the Big 12 is baked into 8 bids in the Players era. So maybe 2 different schools take those spots. I don't know what that would look like 2 or 3 years from now.
I'm pretty sure Kansas and Arizona are locked in because they're the huge brands, and as the Players era is partnered with the Big 12, they're going to be offering the biggest brands. I don't think they can get out of it, nor do I think the Big 12 is incentivized to get them out of it. I think it's a great point about the Diamond Cup, and what I've read about it basically is if you build it, they will come.
Yep.
And that is like they're going to then go after they've got commitments from teams to the networks and say, this is what we've got. How much are you going to pay for it?
Mm-hmm. And if Amazon is spending what they're spending on Duke and 3 very standalone select non-conference matchups, the pedigree and the prestige of the teams that are listed as being the 8 teams in this Diamond Cup, like Amazon Prime and Prime Video just kicked the door open with the Duke deal. Apple, Netflix, YouTube, TV, Amazon might want a piece of this. Like, the potential revenue for a tournament like this would be like nothing we've ever seen before in college basketball. And even the Maui Invitational, like the Maui, the Battle for Atlantis that you noted, all these ESPN events, they're the casualties from these type of tournaments with the Players era and now the Diamond Cup. But for college basketball, just from a let's get the best brands together in the best tournament setting in front of as many fans as possible for the sport, that's where this is huge.
Yeah.
Tremendous for the sport.
Right. And, again, like, the talent pool has never been better. When you've got, like, 26-year-old former draft picks signing with LSU, right, that indicates the level of talent is much higher than it's ever been. And so, yeah, I mean, the viewing experience of it is really good, too. Again, cool deal. They're sort of, in many ways, like, moving, going from the Battle of Atlantis to this. And again, the incentives are different. It used to be like you could take a cool trip and it'd be a fun team building experience.
Yep.
And now it's like, now you can get money. And that's obviously the biggest key for driving, the want to join these moving forward.
And it just further, it magnifies the separation between blue bloods in all sports that we're seeing right now in this college sports shift. It's happening in football. Now it's happening in basketball. Yeah. You used to have these teams kind of scattered And now, like the Maui Invitational for this year's tournament, Arizona and BYU are the headliners. There's no North Carolina, there's no Duke, there's no Kentucky, there's no Michigan State. It's Clemson, Colorado State, Ole Miss, Providence, VCU, and Washington. And that's for this upcoming season. Last year's Maui Invitational was very similar, where like those traditional blue blood type schools, at least half of them would be blue bloods, and it would be set up that way to where they wouldn't play each other until the semifinals. It's not that way anymore.
Well, think about it from this perspective. You said it. All these MTEs, quote unquote, are owned by ESPN, owned and operated by ESPN events, right? So what have we talked about with football? You've got other networks trying to break down the door with the way in which ESPN has really grown its operation. ESPN started by televising all college sports. That's how they got their start. And so they've owned college sports in many ways for a long time, especially on the basketball side of things. So this is a way for other networks to get involved here, especially when it comes to the streaming services.
Yeah.
The biggest thing, though, is that the 76-team tournament creates a demand problem. I mean, the Diamond Cup organizers specifically mentioned the expanded tournament as motivation. More teams in March Madness dilutes regular season stakes, which means November and December events are more important for generating compelling matchups that actually matter. Losing games in college basketball when you're at the top of the sport hasn't mattered because you're going to still make the tournament anyways.
Exactly.
And with a expanded tournament, that's only enhanced because it, again, dilutes the regular season even more. That's James Westling. I'm Ari Tepke. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo. On the way next, Brett Yormark, the commish. If you missed it yesterday, now's your chance to hear it. Brett Yormark joined us to talk about Redbird Capital, the expansion of the college football playoff, and where the Big 12 is right now. James even asks him about expansion targets. I'm joking, but not really. That's next. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios.
And Sims will keep it. Nice decision there to get deeper into Utah territory.
What a great individual effort.
On 3rd and long, he got 20. Brown now carries. Hanachur was leading the way. Then the ball came out at the end of that. Seconds ticking away. Sims in the pocket. He's going to throw short, and that's Brown.
It's been dismal so far for the Sun Devils. That has to feel good.
Back inside Big 12 today here on Big 12 Radio, brought to you, the full-time fan, by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios. Our Road to Arlington series continues today as we highlight the West Virginia Mountaineers. But first, he's Ari Timken. I'm James Westling, and we welcome in the architect of the most aggressive conference in America, the commissioner, Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark, joining us in studio. First, great to see you. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thrilled to be here, guys, and it's great to see both of you.
Yeah, we appreciate you being with us. Let's start with, probably the biggest story for Big 12 fans, and, that's the deal with the Redbird Capital, which is extremely exciting, especially when you kind of look at the Big 12's specific partnership, the league partnership with Redbird. Can you just kind of give like a 50,000-foot view of why this made sense and what you like about the deal the most?
Well, I'll start off by saying it took a while to get there. We had explored lots of different avenues and options, and ultimately we came down to wanting to create something that was somewhat bespoke and different and ownable. So, yes, we announced our partnership with Redbird. It is a strategic partnership, and at the core, it's about how do we create value for our member institutions, and the best way to do that is through our commercial business. And Redbird has an incredible ecosystem that they're a part of. And we've already tapped into it already. I mean, they were behind the scenes. They were the facilitator of the PayPal deal. They helped us consummate a fantastic partnership with New Era. They also were the ones that facilitated the Players Era partnership. And that was all being done informally. So we said, why don't we double down? So it's a three-pronged approach. Let's continue to do commercial deals and tap into the ecosystem that Redbird has. 2, let's put some resources on our balance sheet. So if and when there's opportunities to invest in revenue-generating companies that provide short-term value and long-term value to the conference and our members, let's explore that. And lastly, and certainly not at the core of the partnership, was a safety net of an opt-in capital solution for our member institutions. And it's really up to them whether they want to pursue it or not. It's kind of arm's length of the conference. And that's kind of an insurance policy for each of our schools to determine they want to tap into or not, given the unexpected that we seem to face quite often in this industry. But I'm excited about it. The Redbird guys are fantastic. As I said, we've been working together for quite some time, and effectively we made the partnership more formal. And one thing that's a very interesting dynamic when you think about the ecosystem of Redbird is they are the second biggest shareholder in CBS Paramount. And we also know that the WBD deal should be closing sometime this fall. So it's not a bad thing to be part of that family also. So all in all, I'm excited about it, and I know we'll do some special things together.
Yeah, the impact on the media rights and the television side, and you hit it there. We noted right away that Redbird is the second biggest shareholder in Paramount, which is CBS.
Yeah, 22%, I believe. So.
What I guess how much of an impact did that have on making this whole thing work, and just what could that mean long-term potentially?
Well, listen, it was value add. It wasn't the driver, but it was certainly value add for us. And when you look at all the companies that, they interface with, certainly that one stood out in a big way for us. And, listen, we're going to be back in the marketplace in January of 30 for our next TV deal. And for me, it's always nice to have optionality and, to be aligned with lots of different players. I mean, no different than what we did with our sub-licensing for men's basketball. I want people to like us now, and then hopefully they'll love us when we become free agents. And, that move we made with sub-licensing to bring NBC Peacock in and to bring TNT in addition, to CBS, who had been working with us, and of course ESPN and Fox, gave us unprecedented promotional support this year that drove our ratings up. So that move was great for the immediacy of it, but it also got people to sample us, different networks and partners. So I look at the partnership with Redbird in the same way.
On that note, when you look at 2030, it feels like there are so many more players in that space than there had been previously. I mean, CBS, really on the college basketball side, and then in football, it's been Fox and ESPN. Now, TNT is in on it. Obviously, CBS wants to get deeper. NBC. What about Apple and Netflix and Amazon? They're being much larger players in that space, in sports space. Forecast what 2030 looks like and how many more players there are, which obviously would increase the value of the TV rights.
Listen, I don't have a crystal ball, but I think there'll be a lot of players. I think, the digital players, the streamers are going to be much more active than they were in our last deal. And, we as a conference, myself, the ADs, the board will have to kind of go in the lab and figure out, what is the best path forward. But having optionality is, for me, a necessity. And knowing that there are different players, that we can speak to. And let's face it, I'm in the relationship marketing mode right now. Trust me, there isn't a player out there that I haven't contacted, chatted with, and, just in an effort to be ready. And listen, you need to do that. That's incumbent upon me as the commissioner to make sure that I have all the right relationships in all the right places. No different than when I got here, I had some pre-existing relationships with ESPN Fox, which certainly benefited, the conference when we went early. And my goal is to set the table now, and establish those relationships, if I don't have them already, in order to be ready for 30. So I'm excited about that moment.
Yeah, us too. Are you for or against the 24 team college football playoff, and why or why not?
Well, listen, first of all, I've been on record to say, in theory, in concept, I like the 24. We obviously have our spring business meetings next week. We'll be with our football coaches and ADs, and I'm sure that will be, one of the topics that we discuss. Having said that, I do like 24 for a couple of reasons. One, I think too many good teams are being left out. Okay, and we saw that over the last couple of years. So the obvious is more access, I think, is great. And more access would be great for the Big 12. Aside from that, I think coaches and how rosters are being built and the cost of rosters are all based on what does it cost to be one of 12. And I think going to 24 takes some heat out of the system. Coaches are no longer judged based on are you in the CFP or not. Now it's just be in the top 25, okay, and good things can happen. And same things with the same concept when it comes to the cost of building a roster. Right now it's about spending the resources to be one of 12. That changes dramatically when you got to be top 25. And by the way, how many schools are going to continue to invest?
Right. Great point.
Year in and year out if they're not getting into the CFP. So for the obvious, I like the access, but I also think that it takes some heat out of the system. And I think that's good for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Behind the scenes, you're obviously working, with all the other commissioners and specifically, Sankey and Petiti, who are in many ways driving the bus here. How likely is it? Because it seems like, Petiti wants 24, Sankey is stuck on 16. Do you think it goes from 12 to 16 to 24? Do you think we get to what would be the impetus for maybe Sankey coming off of the 16 piece or Petiti going to and saying 16 is okay?
Well, I read this morning, and again, no different than fans, that Tony, coming out of the spring business meetings, referenced that it's 24 or nothing. Okay, that's effectively what he said. And, Greg, obviously, he's got to do what he needs to do and what's in the best interest of the SEC, and I'm sure he's going to have those conversations next week at his spring business meetings. Candidly, from where I sit, the management committee of the CFP just needs to roll up our sleeves and do the work. Because there's a lot of work that needs to be done around 24. The unintended consequences of going 24, what does that mean? I've said before, what are the economics? Can we start modeling what those look like? Because if you go to 24, you get rid of your champ game. And the champ game for the Big 12 is very valuable, okay? And I'm not in this deal just to stay whole.
Right.
I want there to be additive revenue and additive economics that we can all share in. Okay, so we have to do the work. Again, the concept of 24 I like a lot, but you got to roll up your sleeves and do the work and make sure it proves out.
Yeah. Looking at all the projected 24 team field and who would have been in last year, the Big 12 is very well represented, which is exciting to us. The Big 12 would have been very well represented as it already was in the NCAA tournament too. If we were at 76 last year, a couple of teams would have been in. So the tournament expands. At first, we're like, what is the bracket going to look like? And then we see the NCAA roll it out, and okay, it's not really that much different. Just your thoughts on the expansion and what that means for the conference.
I was for expansion. Listen, I don't think there's a better and more marquee event in U.S. sports than what takes place during March Madness.
Same, yeah.
I mean, it captivates fans from across the country, from all different ages and backgrounds, and I think it's fantastic. And it's a wonderful event. And even before taking the role as commissioner, I was a huge fan. Having said that, modest expansion was certainly what I was looking for, and I think that's what ultimately happened. And I do believe that the Power Four, but specifically the Big 12, will be a beneficiary of that. Those schools that were somewhat on the cusp, like Cincinnati last year, would get in. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that's good for our conference, more access to showcase what I think is the #1 basketball conference in America. In fact, I've said it before, I'll say it again, second only to the NBA. And so I think it's good. I think it's really good for us.
When it comes to football, the NFL draft was extremely good for the Big 12. You know, Texas Tech with 8 draft picks, that sets a record. I mean, 38 total selections overall, 6 in the first round. Just sort of curious for your overall thoughts on football, how it's performing, what surprises you, and how much you think that continues to grow over the next few years.
Our schools are making great investments in football. We understand the importance of football, and it's the anchor, really, candidly, to everything we do. Yeah. And I like our trajectory. You know, our teams are investing, they're getting better. Obviously, it's been a very deep conference for the last couple of years, but you are starting to see some schools emerge to the top, which I think is critically important. You know, parity is wonderful, but you want some of those outlier schools that are part of the national conversation year in and year out, and you're starting to see that now in our conference. We were active in the portal. I think many of our teams got better. At least I expect that to be the case next year. And I'm excited about what's in front of us for football. Just commenting on the draft, 38 student athletes in the draft. I thought that was a great number for us. It shows that student athletes are voting yes for the Big 12. They like our product. They like our style of play. So I'm excited about it. I think football is going to be a big highlight for us next year.
When it comes to the spring sports, we've got the commish, Brett Yormark, is with us in studio. You know, the Big 12 has had a landmark year with several moments, like the Big 12, Arizona State, Texas Tech softball game broke records for the Big 12 softball title, baseball in the thick of their postseason tournament. So, what has this spring done for the conference in terms of kind of adding one more layer to being a complete powerhouse, completely rounded league?
Well, it's a great comment. I've said all along that I think there's real upside in Olympic sports for us. Even as you think about 2030, there's been so much value around football. And you guys have heard it before. I think basketball is totally undervalued, and I think people are starting to realize that now. But I also think Olympic sports are undervalued. And effectively, or at least in the past, it's been a bit of a throw-in. But you think about volleyball right now and women's soccer. You think about softball, to your point, and baseball, wrestling. Those are a real emerging sports on the national landscape and getting a lot of attention. And you're right. Our championship softball game set an all-time record. When you think about ratings, we have 4 of our teams in the super regionals that start, I think, tomorrow. We've got 5 baseball teams in the top 25. In fact, I'm heading to Arizona tomorrow night to see some games on Friday and Saturday. So the spring Olympic sports activity for us has been fantastic. The results have been even better. And I think it's an area of growth for us at the conference.
Yeah, and I mean, just to give you some credit here, the emergence of women's lacrosse, the Big 12 under your watch invested in women's lacrosse, and that's seemed to bear some fruit. Obviously Florida getting the Final Four last year, Colorado with an incredible run, losing to Northwestern, and a crazy game in the Elite Eight. Beach volleyball, TCU winning a national championship. So it's clear that you have seen growth opportunities in those sports as well.
I think it's a major upside opportunity for us. And we're going to continue to double down, storyteller around our Olympic sports more so than ever before. And our schools are making the necessary investments, which I'm happy to see. Yeah. Beach volleyball, I'm a big fan of. I think that's a big growth sport as well. So I think we're on the right track when you think about our Olympic sports and where they're going.
So, Brett, a couple of times we've been able to ask you kind of some get-to-know-you questions. So let's wrap with this. You can either give us, your top 3 targets for the next wave of conference realignment, or let's say you're getting ready for the next big negotiation. What's your go-to meal as you get ready for that?
Oh, I mean, I've had a go-to meal. I'm a pretty regimented guy. I'm sure that doesn't surprise you. And I eat 3 meals a day. I eat half a scone and yogurt in the morning for breakfast. I eat a peanut butter sandwich on whole wheat for lunch, and probably 5 out of 7 nights I do chicken and vegetables. So that is effectively my go-to every day, because I'm in deal mode every day, and I got to feel right. And my wife does a fantastic job making sure that I'm eating well and taking my vitamins, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't deviate much from that. But that's been part of my regimen a long time.
This guy makes fun of me all the time because I never deviate from 8 hours of sleep.
All right, I like that.
Okay?
I like that.
Got to figure out a way.
You don't get 8 hours of sleep at night, do you?
I don't.
Yeah,
I don't.
No. You get 5?
I'm usually around 6.
Okay.
6.5.
Me too.
And I work out every morning, and just to get ready, and but 6.5 seems to work for me.
The last one for me is, you famously have this whiteboard in your office, and plenty of ideas on it. Some you're executing on, some you're not. What's on the whiteboard right now? What are some of the big ideas, whether they're going to be executable or not?
Well, it starts with truly, how do we as a conference create value for our member institutions? That's the header. We're in the value creation business. And then the second header is making sure that as we think about value creation, let's make sure we focus on what matters most. I just did an offsite with my leadership team, and those were some common themes. So I'm always thinking about, how do I create value? How do I keep building our brand and our profile and narrative? How do I continue to drive our commercial business? Because that's going to provide real resources, to our schools. How do I work with our media partners to make sure I keep pushing them, to give us the right narrative? I mean, this past year, what ESPN and Fox did for us was fantastic. Mm-hmm. When you think about big noon kickoffs, which are like advertorials or game days, or the windows they're giving us. I mean, it all comes back down to value creation. And I'm focused on every day. And there's a lot of things on my whiteboard, but I'm becoming more disciplined and really focusing on the things that matter most and are going to drive the needle for the conference. And that's what my colleagues and I are focused on every day.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for your time. Number one, we are huge fans of everything going on with the league and the work that you do, putting this conference at the forefront of all the national conversation. So thank you.
And I want to thank you guys. You guys do a fantastic job in keeping our narrative, going each and every week. So thank you for all your efforts. You guys know you're a big part of our family and what we're doing to move this thing forward. So thank you both.
We love it. We love it, man. Happy to be here. That is the Commissioner, Brett Yormark, joining us here on Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, heard exclusively on TuneIn. You're watching us on Big 12 Studios. The road to Arlington is around the corner as we highlight West Virginia, biggest question marks, gambles, trap games. We break it all down. This is Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio and Big 12 Studios. Back inside Big 12 today.
Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo. And with our Modelo fan rules, Modelo fan rule number 31, there is no off-season, only research. And that continues in our Road to Arlington series, where we are giving you an hour breakdown, a deep dive into each and every Big 12 team, letting you know their biggest game, their trap game, their biggest three-game stretch, the biggest question marks, the most important number for this season, and many other questions getting answered, including why they will or why they will not make it on the road to Arlington. All right, James, today we are zeroed in on Orlando, Florida. It is the UCF Knights. And so let's start here on the road to Arlington with UCF. Take a look at their biggest question mark or marks.
And that's probably my number one takeaway, is that there are a lot of question marks surrounding UCF in year 2 of the Scott Frost era.
Lots. Probably more question marks than answers.
So there could be a lot of variety as we put our list together. My biggest question mark is going to be running back, because when I think of UCF, I think of all the NFL caliber running backs that they've had over the years, starting with R.J. Harvey from 2 years ago. In last year's two-headed monster, Miles Montgomery, team leading rusher, over 700 yards. He's off to the NFL, signed with the Patriots as an undrafted free agent. And then you have Jaden Nixon, who is second in the Big 12 in yards per carry at 7.8. He's out the door. So your 1-2 punch is gone. That's almost 1,300 yards between the two. 66% of your production has walked out. Now, who's left? Tavion Swint is probably the guy I'm highest on, because he was a 4-star recruit out of high school and is only going to be a sophomore. Scott Frost historically has run like a 4-back rotation. In fact, his 2016-2017 teams had 4 players or more with at least 50 carries. So it's a running back by committee. I just don't know that I have a lot of trust in all the inexperience that will be that committee this year. Their number one portal addition at the running back position is a transfer from Central Arkansas. So that's the biggest question mark for me, is the running back room.
Yeah, and running back was one position on offense that, to me, didn't come up here, but certainly should, and so I'm glad you hit on that. For me, I've got 2, and that would be quarterback and offensive line. So let's start with, Alonzo Barnett, who may be the highest-paid player that in NIL that UCF has ever had, but his sort of standing, health, and then full integration into this offense is a major question mark here. Number one, Scott Frost and staff kind of talked about his that he was missing throughout spring camp this year, and they were talking about being ultra cautious with him. So, the media during media portions of open practice during spring football didn't see Barnett at all. Not really sure if there's an ultra cautious approach from a health standpoint, or if it's more of they're trying to hide everything they possibly can. But it's interesting. His involvement in spring football is very minimal, which says a lot, because he's trying to be integrated into a brand new offense run by Scott Frost and Cooper. We've seen the Knights spend at quarterback before. They brought in KJ Jefferson in 2024, and that was a big swing and miss. So the pattern of high-cost portal quarterbacks underperforming in the Big 12 is a known UCF failure. So for me, that's a huge question. The other one, beyond the running back room, would be offensive line. They do bring in longtime offensive line coach A.J. Blazik, who joined the staff in December. Remember, Sean Clark, their offensive line coach last year, passed away last September. They had kind of 2 different coaches have shared responsibilities there on the offensive line. Their offensive line was subsequently really bad last year. Blazik joins the staff. And guard Connor Meadows do return, so the right side of the line is sort of fortified. But they've got some major questions at center, left tackle, left guard. They were very aggressive in the portal, but these are question marks until they become answers on the offensive line.
Totally agree. So you highlight the quarterback position, which is important. It's an important position, especially in this league. That is my biggest gamble, is the quarterback that they specifically targeted in the portal, and that is Alonzo Barnett III. Comes over from James Madison. On paper, we thought he could be a breakout star. Sun Belt Player of the Year, Dudley Award winner, almost 3,000 yards passing. He's dual threat. Thought, okay, teams just overlooked him because he's only 5'11". Well, there's more to it than that. The injury stuff is a major concern, major red flag. So he had a torn ACL in November of 2024. He recovered, battled back, was healthy for the most part last year. But a dual threat quarterback that has a history of knee problems is very alarming to me. And then you layer on top of the fact that you hit it, he missed the entire spring with another undisclosed injury. And Scott Frost is trying to say that it's nothing major, he should be fine, should be taking live reps sometime later on this month, which is almost over. But the gamble is, number one, leaning on a Sun Belt quarterback to be your guy in the Big 12. And the second gamble is just his injury history. And then the third thing I would add is that there were 5 different starting quarterbacks last year at UCF, just like there were at West Virginia. I think West Virginia is in a much better position at that position with the guys that they have coming back, and Hawkins coming in, who has no injury history. His was just all upstairs. It was the mental IQ that was lacking because of his inexperience. Totally different situation.
He's most likely the highest paid player that UCF has ever had in the portal. So that makes it a huge gamble. And again, going back to the KJ Jefferson piece, like they've swung and missed on big-time quarterbacks before. Now that's probably, where the comparisons to Barnett and KJ Jefferson end. But the other part of the gamble is the injury piece. You mentioned the ACL. And look, I mean, of course the coaches are going to diminish, an injury and say they're being ultra cautious. And even listening to some of the podcasts surrounding UCF, nobody seems to make a big deal out of it. Like, I think you're missing a huge piece to this. This is a big deal. You are supposed to establish what you're going to look like and start what this team will be in spring together. Now, yeah, he's getting mental reps. Big deal. This is a brand new offense that he's learning, and he's supposed to be, playing at a high level. Mackenzie Milton is the quarterback's coach, so there's a familiar profile with him. Like, the upside is there. It's obvious. He's the perfect type of quarterback for this offense, but it's a huge gamble given the injury stuff, given that he didn't really participate in spring. I'm not a big believer in the mental reps. You got to be physically out there with your teammates, establishing that chemistry. It is a big deal until it isn't. It isn't a big deal until it is. And look, is it going to be completely detrimental to their opportunity this year? Time will tell, but you start to build the building blocks of your team in spring, so it's not nothing that he's missing. And of course, Scott Frost will diminish that.
And I actually love the KJ Jefferson comp because they're similar players. Like, not necessarily known for their accuracy, but cannon of an arm, dual threat guys, bigger, more physical guys. KJ Jefferson was built like an NFL tight end. Alonzo Barnett's only 5'11", but he's about 230. Like, he's a thicker, low center of gravity quarterback. So even though it's a different coaching staff, there's a lot of similarities.
All right, your trap game.
So my trap game is the game that UCF, if they're going to be a bowl-eligible team, absolutely has to have. And it's in a really tricky spot. And it's Friday, October 30th. It was moved up from a Saturday against Baylor. It's in Orlando. It is their Mission X space game, which they have never lost. In the 11 editions of the space game, UCF is undefeated. They always win this game. Crowd is going crazy. But this year, this game is right after the BYU game, which is their homecoming game on October 24th. So back-to-back home games, classic letdown spot, and BYU is tough and physical. They impose their will with their physicality. So UCF could be beat up, is what I'm saying, with all the injury stuff that they already have. Baylor went only 5-7 last year, but like with the hot seat coaching watch for Dave Aranda, this is a game that if you're Baylor, you have to go on the road and upset UCF, if it is even considered an upset at that point in time. So it's a shorter week because it's played on a Friday, coming off BYU, primetime lights, coming off the homecoming against a really dangerous team. That is a major trap game for the Knights.
Yeah, for me, I went with the October 10th game at Oklahoma State. This is the second straight road game for UCF. And I'll get to this later. Some of the numbers are kind of overwhelming, but UCF has 2 road wins in the Big 12 in 3 seasons. 2. So this is a big one against a team that's rebuilding, that have decently high expectations in Oklahoma State for a team, again, that hasn't won a Big 12 game in 2 seasons. So you've got Houston the week before at Houston, and then at Oklahoma State the next week, and the next week is the BYU homecoming game. So for me, it's a big-time trap game spot because it's one of the more underappreciated games sandwiched in between 2 really difficult games with 2 teams that factor in at the top of the conference in terms of BYU and Houston. So the Oklahoma State game on October 10th is very much the trap game for me.
Love it.
Biggest game.
They will have to be much better on the road this year because they play 5 Big 12 road games and a non-conference road game against Pitt. They only have 6 home games on their schedule this year. So with that said, I've got their biggest game, the Big 12 home opener against TCU. It's Friday, September 26th. It is the first time that UCF has opened Big 12 play at home since they joined the league. Their only Big 12 road win, or one of the two I should say, came at TCU back in 2024. They won that one 36-35 on the road. Well, now they get them at home. And if you don't win this one, like I'm looking at their schedule, which is really tough. If you can't protect your home field against a team that in their Big 12 opener is breaking in a new quarterback, breaking in a new offense under Gordon Samus, at Houston and Oklahoma State, their next two, like they could easily start 0-3 in Big 12 play is what I'm getting at. So they have to have that one. I think it's the biggest game on their schedule, and it's early in the year, and so it'll dictate a lot of what their bowl hopes look like the rest of the way.
I actually really like their schedule in terms of favorability. You're right to point out the 6 road games, which is big, but I also have TCU as the biggest game of the season, and that's because, as you mentioned, it's the first conference game, so it sets the tone for the way the rest of the conference schedule will go. UCF last year started 3-0, if you remember, before losing 7 of their last 9 in conference play. And, like, TCU should be pretty good, but I don't think they're in that upper tier right now. So it feels like a home game against a team that you could punch up against. If UCF can't handle a TCU program at home, year one of this new offense with the new quarterback, early in the season, as they're still trying to figure out the kinks of that offense, then the entire conference schedule comes under fire and pressure immediately. So it's, to me, the first real data point on whether Barnett is ready for the big time here. The TCU game, easily the biggest game on the schedule, and we agree there. All right, how about the 3-game swing stretch, James?
So the biggest 3-game stretch, and I guess it would be a swing stretch, I have as the last 3 weeks of the season. Because to your point, their schedule, when you look at it in its totality, it's one of the lighter schedules in the league, but it's very top-heavy. Their toughest games are the first 7 games on their schedule.
Yep.
So even if they're 2-5, 7 games in, they could still make a bowl because they've got that space game at home against Baylor, then they play at Kansas. But their last 3 games, 2 of the 3 are at home. Arizona State at home, Iowa State at home, and then they're at Colorado. There is a realistic possibility that they could run the table in those 3 games. And if they're even in the conversation as a middle-of-the-pack Big 12 team, 7 or 8 games in, that really ramps up the importance of those last 3 as maybe being a breakthrough contender this year. So it's the last 3 for me on their regular season schedule.
So I don't have that, but you've sold me, because the 3-game stretch that I have would be October 3rd at Houston, October 10th at Oklahoma State, October 24th versus BYU. So there's a bye week in between there. This is their tough stretch. Yep. The reason I had this is because of how tough it is, but also, like, they can't go 0-3 in that stretch. They've got to win at least one of those games if they're going to be a bowl team and have a major improvement year over year from last year. So for me, it's the 2 consecutive road games, one at a Houston program with the most experienced roster in the Big 12, one in Stillwater, and then followed immediately by that homecoming measuring stick game against BYU at the Bounce House. So, like, there's some fatigue built in there. It's a brutal stretch. They do have a bye in there, which is nice. But for me, that's it, although you had me believing. Because even if they go 1-2 in that stretch, if they finish out that final stretch 3-0, I think they'd be in good shape.
Totally. I mean, 7 games in, if you're UCF, if you're 3-4, you feel pretty good about yourself. If you're 4-3, you're thinking, hey, we can make a run at a Big 12 championship game appearance because of how top-heavy the schedule is in those first 7 games.
All right, on the way next as we continue the road to Arlington, UCF. It's the one player they can't lose, their hidden strength, the number, the most important number that will be indicative of the type of season they're going to have, the pressure point, what success looks like, why they will and why they won't win the Big 12. That's next as we continue on our road to Arlington, UCF with James Wesley. I'm Ari Temkin. We are presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios.
Here comes the TCU pressure. Deal picked off. That will do it. Nandy Obi-Izor seals the rivalry win for the Horned Frogs.
to. Earl under pressure. Sack wrapped up and brought down. Andy Obi Izor, the sack for TCU.
That was Bain, right? That was Bain. Tonight's thing. Oh, big hit. Obi Izor in the backfield. Lift him up, form tackle, throw him down. My God. That is a tackle if I've ever seen one. Boom. Good Lord.
Side of Lopez. And no running room.
This defense, you keep detained, not fooled at all. Finish at the end of the year where no one feels like you have anything to play for.
What do you have inside of you? Pryor on the run, can't get outside. Obi Izor spun him down.
If he can correct on a 3rd and 11. He steps up, in some trouble, and he's swung down. Obi Izor with the sack.
Big 12 Radio, this is our road to Arlington. deep dive into UCF football. We just went over the biggest question marks, biggest gamble, their trap game, biggest game, and 3-game swing stretch. We've got Matt Marshall of the Orlando Sentinel coming up in about 15 minutes. But let's pick it back up as we continue doing a deep dive by answering some questions, and that is the one player they can't lose.
Yeah, so for the one player they can't lose, I simply went with their best player, and it's pretty clear. It's their tight end, Dylan Wade. He is their highest-rated NFL prospect. He is a top 3 tight end in this conference, and he set UCF's all-time single-season tight end record last year, a record that has held since 1996, receptions, yards, and touchdowns. He had 43 grabs, over 500 yards, and 5 scores. He had a career game against Oklahoma State, went for a $145 and 2 scores, had an 83-yard touchdown, the 6th longest reception in UCF history. So with the run game completely gutted, they lose their top 2 backs. He becomes their quarterback, who will be new, and Alonzo Barnett, whoever the guy is, if he's banged up. They've got a bunch of newcomers at that position behind Barnett III. Like, he's their safety blanket. The receivers are also unproven. So I look at the one most experienced guy on the roster who's been through it. Where's number 0? You can't be a tight end and wear number 0 if you aren't an absolute baller. So Dylan Wade is my pick.
Yeah, I went on the other side of the football for the one player they can't lose, and that, I would argue, is their best player overall, and that's Lewis Carter, their linebacker, who is the quarterback of the defense. Alex Grinch, their defensive coordinator, said of Carter, quote, "I try really hard not to fall in love with guys, but I'm a Lewis Carter fan, man. He's a football-playing dude. He runs, he hits, he leads, he does just about everything at the level on which you want it." Carter had a team-high 92 tackles in 2025, and he's the one player they can't lose because he's the linchpin of a defense that, for one, is trying to absorb the loss of 2 edge rushers to the NFL and integrate a rebuilt linebacking core around him. UCF's D is reliant on Carter anchoring the middle. Grinch coaches the safeties himself and has multiple pieces at linebacker and edge. Carter's a player who translates the system from spring to fall and sets the standard locker room, and then the run fits on Saturday. So for me, if you miss Carter, your linebacking core is ruined. So he's the one player they can't lose. Here's what Scott Frost said, the coach of UCF, heading out of spring camp, about their priorities.
The biggest priority for the team right now is to recover. We worked them really hard all winter. They gave us a ton of effort all spring. And with the calendar we have now, I think training well is important. Recovering well is really important too. We're gonna go through a long stretch starting in July where the guys aren't gonna get much time off. So they have to take advantage of the time they have off, let their body recover. We sent them home with the mandate that they weren't supposed to do anything for an entire week and get away from it. Then we have a training schedule for them for a couple weeks until they get back to campus, and I expect them to come back ready to go to work hard to get even better. But the number one priority right now is to rest and recover.
All right, there's Scott Frost as we move along on the road to Arlington, UCF. All right, what's the hidden strength, James?
So I think the strength that is very hidden is their secondary. Their defense last year, they were top 3 in the Big 12 in passing defense. Now, they didn't have a ton of interceptions. They only had 9. But they allowed just 186 yards through the air in their 12 games. And they have 3 starters back who are all proven guys. Jaden Bellamy was an honorable mention All Big 12 guy last year. He had a team-high 8 pass breakups and a couple of picks. Damari Henderson is back. Had 61 tackles last year. That was 3rd on the team. And then Braden Marshall is a guy that's born and raised in Orlando, local kid. He's been a 3-year, not necessarily starter. He has started some games, but he's a major contributor and depth piece. They lose Philip Dunham, who declared for the NFL draft, but having Alex Grinch back, number one, you've got that continuity in terms of your defensive coordinator. To your point, he also coaches the safeties and oversees the secondary. Like, that back end of UCF's defense quietly returns the most experience positionally on the roster. So I really like their secondary for this year.
Yeah, I also have secondary as the hidden strength. You know, Alex Grinch brings in David Overstreet as the corners coach. This guy that's spent a lot of time in the NFL. He was most recently coaching the Cowboys under Mike McCarthy. Also was a secondary coach for the Bears. So he brings legitimate NFL juice and experience to that secondary. And you mentioned it. I mean, Antoine Jackson and Jaden Bellamy return. Braden Marshall, the nickel, returns. Safety Damari Henderson returns. Plus, redshirt senior corner DJ Bell is back. So they have a lot of experience. They've got a lot of continuity. And to your point, it's not just experience from players that couldn't play. This is one of the best secondaries in the Big 12 last year, and they all returned. So it is absolutely their most hidden strength. All right, what's the number?
So my number is 388. 388, because this was shocking to me. When you think about UCF and Miles Montgomery and Dixon at running back, like, they had a pretty solid ground game, right? But they only had 388 total rushing attempts for the entire season.
Wow.
Fewest in the Big 12.
5 different quarterbacks. Probably because they found themselves down in a bunch of games, but that is shocking.
Dead last in the Big 12. They had the fewest number of attempts. And just to put that into perspective, Utah ran it 575 times, almost 200 times more, or 15 to 20 times more per game than UCF. And the kicker is that when they did rush the football, they had success. They averaged 4.9 yards per carry. So I can't figure that out. Were they not calling the run? Were they just having too many 3-and-out? Like, why weren't they on the field rushing the football, which was probably their strength last year, because Taven Jackson was a dual-threat quarterback when he was on the field. So that no-huddle spread system, I thought, leaned more on the ground game, and it'll be interesting to see if they do that this year, especially with all the unproven running backs. Barnett's a dual-threat guy, over 500 yards last year at James Madison, but the number's 388 because it was just stunning to me.
That is. The number for me is 37.5. That was their third down percentage defense in 2025, which was 49th nationally per team rankings. So when you think about it, I mean, 49th in the country with Malachi Lawrence and Nigel Lee Kelly rushing the passer. Well, they don't have those two guys this year. We just talked about the secondary being a strength, but how long can those guys hold if there is no pass rush? So, like, to me, the number to beat this year is 37.5 in terms of the percentage of their third down defense. That's a big number, because when you think about, again, this defense not having the proven pass rushers that they've had and the secondary that they had, like, their success on defense kind of depends on their ability to get off the field on third down. So to me, that's a huge part of the success for UCF this year, and that's why it's the number. Pressure point.
Pressure point for me is simply Scott Frost. I mean, he's in his fourth year overall if you bridge his two stints together. Year 2 of his return. And all the success he had the first go-around with that undefeated season in 2017, UCF, they expect to win. They were one of the best group of 6 teams in the country. They are very much built like Cincinnati and Houston in that powerhouse at the G5 level at the time. And now, year 2 is kind of the like, this is it season for a lot of coaches. Last year, Willie Fritz with the uptick. Brett Brennan at Arizona. Fritz at Houston with the uptick in year 2. I think fans are expecting, with the floor being making a bowl, and then UCF, to kind of back their point, they're top 6 in the Big 12 in returning production. They're top 50 in the country in returning production. So with the overhaul last year, the production coming back, even though we noted that at key positions it's pretty thin, like, he's got to make a bowl this year.
Yeah, Scott Frost, easily the pressure point here. He said in spring that this 2026 squad is, quote-unquote, clearly better across almost every position group because they finally know the system. That's a direct quote from Scott Frost. That's going to set expectations pretty high, right? You went 5-7 last year, and you have clearly a better team that has a better understanding of this, of what they're trying to do. Like, that's the language of a coach who is setting an expectation. You mentioned this. UCF ranks 6th in the Big 12 in returning production, and defensively, they're 26th nationally in returning production. Plus, the schedule avoids the 2 programs most analysts project as conference favorites, including Texas Tech and Utah. So, I mean, if this roster with this schedule under staff in year 2 of its own installation finishes 5-7 again, there's going to be major question marks about Scott Frost's ability to win again at UCF in the Big 12. So, yeah, I think, Scott Frost easily the pressure point here. All right, what does success actually look like?
Well, the recurring theme for these teams that finished towards the bottom of the Big 12 last year is to make a bowl. And I don't see it any different for UCF. You have to make a bowl or bowl eligibility. I know a lot of teams opt out, but they've missed bowls 3 straight seasons. I do think there is a path. You win the layups against Bethune-Cookman and Georgia State. You steal that home opener against TCU. You get a road win at Kansas, and then road game at Colorado or Baylor at home. Like, I think it's possible. But their schedule, even though the back half is nice on paper, in terms of the home and away splits, it's one of the worst in the Big 12. A non-conference road game, 5 road games in league play. So something they haven't been able to do the last 4 or 5 years, really, win on the road, is going to be paramount for their success and for them to get to 6.
Yeah, I've actually got 8 wins for this team as what success looks like. I have higher expectations for some of these other teams we talked about because of their schedule, because they added experienced one-and-done type players from the portal. Like, the biggest contrast between UCF and West Virginia, I think they're really good comparison points, is Rich Rod in year 2 of his second stint with West Virginia went and found guys with multiple years of eligibility. Scott Frost in his second year with his second stint at UCF went the opposite direction, went with more experienced guys that have just 1 year of eligibility left. So, like, there's a lot of pressure on them to win. And then you factor in, like, yeah, they've got 5 road games, but those are winnable road games. And then at home, TCU, BYU, Baylor, Arizona State, Iowa State. So, I mean, count them out. And I've got 8 wins, whether it's 7 wins and then a bowl win or 8 wins and a bowl loss, right? I think however you get there, I think 8 wins is very attainable for this team. And to me, that's what success will look like this season. Why will they win the Big 12, James?
Well, Alonzo Barnett III stays upright and stays healthy. The receivers blossom. Dylan Wade is a top 3 tight end like he was last year in the Big 12. The secondary locks down on a lot of new quarterbacks in this league. That's the path. The offensive line is better. But I look at, like, if we were doing a side-by-side of West Virginia and UCF, I'm higher on West Virginia based off of their recruiting classes the last 2 years. I'm worried about the UCF ground game. I'm worried about the fact that they played 5 quarterbacks, and the quarterback that they brought in missed the entire spring season with an injury. So there's still time for them to get healthy, and Scott Frost said that in the clip we played. They've got to be healthy. So their path, take care of business at home, steal a couple on the road, and stay healthy.
Yeah, I mean, their path is the defensive continuity and the schedule. Because they avoid Utah and Texas Tech. And then you look at every other contender on the schedule that carries some vulnerabilities. I mean, BYU is talented, but they play at the bounce house. Yep. Oklahoma State's installing this new system under Morris. Arizona State has major questions. Iowa State is in the middle of a huge rebuild. So I think, to me, like, you look at that mid-October through mid-November schedule, like you said, and every game there is winnable. That's their road to Arlington. Now, why won't they win the Big 12, James?
The injury bug bites them again. Alonzo Barnett III is never healthy. The defense outside of the secondary, they just don't have the depth on the defensive line. The offensive line, which is rebuilt in a lot of ways, doesn't have the continuity. They get off to a slow start, and they crumble. Like, that's the thing. Those first 7 games, you're in survival mode. If you can survive those first 7, you can be in a really good position. But if there are only 2 wins, 7 games into the season are Bethune-Cookman and Georgia State, all of a sudden the discussion surrounding Scott Frost is very different than it is right now.
Yeah, for me, UCF still hasn't proven that they could win at this level. They're 7-20 in the Big 12 across 3 seasons. They have 2 road wins in the Big 12 in 3 seasons. Until they prove otherwise, like, that's the noose around their neck. Mm-hmm. Like, that's not just anomalies. That's the trend right now. The 3-game stretch in October that I referenced requires 2 road wins just to stay relevant in the conference race. History says that stretch ends 1-2 at best. Look, the other part to this is Malachi Lawrence was a first-round draft pick of the Dallas Cowboys. Lawrence has been with the program since 2021. Replacing him and Nigel Lee Kelly simultaneously in a room where the projected starters have never started a Big 12 game is significant. So if the pass rush doesn't generate consistent pressure by October, Grinch's experienced secondary will be asked to cover receivers against clean-pocketed quarterbacks all season, a recipe for the defensive scoring number to creep from 37.5 towards 42 on that third down conversion rate we talked about, which is where the season can unravel. I think there's a lot of reason for optimism, and that's why I think like 8 wins is very much attainable. But for me, they've got to prove they can win at this level consistently. 7-20 over 3 seasons in the Big 12 and 2 road wins is not a team that can consistently compete at this level. So they've got to prove that. Matt Murschel of the Orlando Sentinel with his input next as we continue on the road to Arlington, UCF. Matt Murschel joins us. It's Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios.
6 on 3rd down, Vittori scrambling and gets dropped in the backfield. Najee Kelly.
Sets up first down and back for Cincinnati from the 8. Quarterback throw, it's Sorsby, and he gets swallowed up immediately. Najee Kelly atones for loss, but he stays on side, right? He's not jumping off side. Doing a good job in the passing game. First down, Andrew Hall on his first carry. Swallowed at the line of scrimmage.
But a good job up front, too, beating the block. 55, John Walker.
Editor.
Oh, look out. Kelly made the hit. The ball comes loose. Rodney Laura has it, and the officials say he's also got a touchdown.
Talked about him before. I mean, he's a problem. He's just a problem waiting to happen.
Steps up. Scooped up. It's going to be a quick 6.
Make plays. Here's Kelly Lawson right in the middle. He bluffs up and then drops back. So that when the defensive end knocks that ball out of the quarterback's hands, it's almost like a blocked kick.
Daniels will give to Williams, and Williams denied. Najee Kelly, the
This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo, and this is the Road to Arlington series. Talking UCF football with Matt Murschel of the Orlando Sentinel. And Matt, we've just spent the last 47 minutes talking about UCF football, and I would say the biggest story around them is the health and status of transfer quarterback Alonzo Barnett, who, from all accounts, didn't participate much in spring football. What can you tell us about Barnett?
Well, he was limited during spring. We got a chance to see him a few times here or there, but never really throwing the football or doing anything, outside of maybe warming up. And basically, talking to Scott Frost about the situation, he said, Barnett's seen a lot of snaps in his career. They wanted to make sure that they didn't, he had some minor issue going into camp, and they didn't want to push him, and they just would rather have had him, kind of limited. And they felt like he'd had enough experience under his belt that it wasn't like he needed to go through all the drills and everything like that. And he believes that once he gets into the summer workouts and things like that, that's when they'll really get an opportunity to see him kind of showcase himself and work with the receivers and build that rapport. They still were doing that as well. And he said he took a lot of mental reps learning the system and everything like that during spring ball. So they don't seem to be very, concerned about Barnett's status, when it comes to health. But based on what's happened with UCF's quarterback room over the last 2 or 3 years, you can understand why, the fan base is a little more on pins and needles when it comes to this, because they want to make sure that they spent a lot of money on a quarterback. They want to make sure they get a quarterback who would actually go out and play.
Just real quick, Matt, I see all the Cubs gear. The White Sox beat the Cubs 2 out of 3 a couple weeks ago, right?
Yeah, I know. still, they were still at the top of their division last I checked. But I mean, that's, I'm a diehard all life, so I'm always gonna support them.
I just happened to be wearing my White Sox shirt today, so I had to bring that up. It's been for a team that was projected to be as bad as they've been the last couple of years. It's been pretty good. So sorry, keep going.
Build a statue. It's a big deal.
Thank you,
Matt.
Yes.
So the most important player that I had for UCF was their tight end, Dylan Wade. So I love that it just dropped today, your piece on Dylan Wade and the no pressure for Wade. What did you learn about him, and what do Big 12 fans need to know about this really underrated NFL caliber tight end?
Yeah, it's funny because when we spoke to Dylan, a few weeks ago, we asked him about pressure, because he had basically a program-setting, season last year for a tight end, over 500 yards catching the ball. He was their number 2 option when it came to the receiver. And, he said, listen, I'm not under any pressure. I feel like this is an opportunity to go out there and just continue to showcase what I've been able to do. And he's been an intricate part of what UCF wants to do offensively. He can block. He gets set off at the slot position. They like him at the tight end position, obviously, as well. He's a guy that has a lot of speed. He can kind of slip in to the middle of the field and really kind of present himself as a challenge for defenses, and it opens up another option for the quarterback. And last year that was huge for them. They needed that, with 4 different guys playing, at quarterback. Sometimes that tight end becomes like a safety valve, and they were able to use him that way. So I think he's going to has an opportunity to have another big year again this year. Barnett obviously has a good arm, understands exactly what he needs to do, and I think Dylan can kind of fit into that role. And plus, this is a room that, over the years, the tight end has just been kind of hit and miss with UCF. Sometimes they've had some guys who step up and have big years, but, mostly it's been on the blocking front. But to have a guy come out and be really kind of that weapon, where you can offensively, I think it's huge for them. And I think Dylan is a guy that's got a nice personality, a guy that is local here from Orlando, and I think the fans really have gravitated to him. It was huge for UCF to get him to come back this year. That was a big piece for them, and I think it's really kind of one of the pieces that they need to have on the field when they take it in the fall.
Yeah, on the defensive side of the ball, Matt, there's a lot of reason for optimism here with Lewis Carter back and then their secondary being intact the way that it is. But obviously, your attention then goes to their pass rush, losing both Kelly and Lawrence. Give us a sense of what they've got at defensive end, and how good do you think this defense can be with the guys they do have back?
Yeah, I think defensive end's one of if you talk about question marks maybe going into this fall, I think that's one right now that people are probably looking at. And, Isaiah Nixon's a guy who's been around the program 4 years. Very similar path to Malachi Lawrence in a lot of ways. Malachi who just got drafted in the first round. He was behind Malachi, had a chance. He could have gone somewhere else. Obviously, could have gone to the portal, decided to come back to UCF. He's a guy that they feel like has got the tools to really kind of step into that role. He understands exactly what this defense needs to do. Really knows the school and the fan base well. Sincere Edwards is another player that they kind of brought in last year. They thought was going to have another kind of big year, but he got hurt early on. He's back to trying to be 100% healthy, and he's a guy they feel like could step in that role and maybe help out across from Isaiah. And then they brought in kind of a mixed match of transfers they feel like could help them out. Ken Talley's a guy who's been around the block a few times. They feel like he could help out. And Bruno Dahl is another guy that has a lot of experience. They feel like can step in that role. So to me, I mean, it's going to be a key important aspect is the ends for them. Listen, they got Horace Lockett in the middle at tackle, and Lockett's I think is a guy who's really kind of emerging, and you'll see a lot more of him this year if he stays healthy. But they need those ends. They need that pressure from the outside. They need to be able to create some turnovers, and I think that's going to be the key for them to have success on defense.
Talking with Matt Murschel, covers UCF for the Orlando Sentinel. Matt, we were both pretty surprised that UCF returns a lot of production, like almost 70%. It's top 6 in the league. Where is most of that production? Because we see like 5 quarterbacks gone. We see the top 2 rushers gone. So where's all that coming from?
Well, I think you got to look at the receiver position. You look at what they were able to do. Last year they came into spring and it was a mystery. Who was going to be their number one receiver? Who was going to be the guy that was going to step up and emerge for them? They didn't have a lot of production come back, from the previous year. This time around, that's different. They bring in Dwayne Thomas Jr., who was their number one receiver last year. He's a guy that they feel like is that number one wideout that can really kind of help them out. Waden Charles was a true freshman last year who emerged later in the season, started to get a lot of buzz. There was a lot of attention on him. He's a guy that's become kind of the number 2 guy. And then, in the transfer portal, they brought in a guy in Josh Derry, who is maybe not a lot of people know where he's from. He's from Monmouth, but he's a guy that's really impressed everyone in spring camp. In fact, every week it seems like we kept hearing his name come up over and over again about how people have been impressed with him. He's a guy I think that will fit, kind of slide maybe into that slot position, and occasionally wide out, that I think will be big for them. Lots of yards, lots of catches. And I think this group right now has a good base, and I think it's going to help them out, especially moving the ball around. So it's going to be key for them because, again, you mentioned it. The running back room is pretty much brand new. They have maybe a couple guys coming back who got very limited runs, very limited carries last year. But wide receiver, I think, is where you're going to see a lot of the production come back, and it gives them an opportunity maybe to bring some guys in and out and have them help out.
Yeah, and then the offensive line, I think, is going to be a huge piece to this. We talked earlier about the biggest question marks, and I think we kind of identified basically every spot on offense except for tight end and wide receivers. With what they've lost at running back, what does the offensive line look like? They do have some guys back at the right side, which I think gives you optimism, but the left side is going to be all new in the center as well.
Yeah. I mean, Preston Cushman, really, the tackle, is the only returning starter they have back from last year. And he's a guy that's really taken up a larger leadership role coming in. I think some of the other guys that they have returning from last year, Connor Meadows was a guy who played at center a little bit. He's been kind of moving around. He's coming back as well. Owen Spell is the guy that they had some snaps as well. But then they went out in the portal. They got some really good guys. They got Henry Tabanisi from Buffalo. Tyler Gibson they brought in, Cooper Terpstra, who's a guy from Michigan State who played a little bit at center. And then, they brought in a new, offensive line coach in A.J. Blazik, and they feel like he can really kind of help elevate this unit. You got to remember last year, they lost their offensive line coach, Sean Clark, in week 2 or 3, who unexpectedly passed away. And that was a big blow to this group. And I think, they were able to kind of keep it together for the rest of the season. Well, now they got Blazik, and he comes in, he's got an opportunity to really kind of get this unit back. Every offensive lineman we've spoken with loves the atmosphere they got in this group. They feel like they're able to showcase their versatility. Guys will be able to move around in different spots. That's going to be huge for them as well if they have to rotate some guys out. And Blazik has told us, he'd like to get, anywhere from 8 to 11 guys that they can kind of rotate in and out and really help them out. So that's going to be key for them, obviously. They need someone to protect the quarterback, and they need to be able to punch big holes because they're going to be able to have a chance to create some running room for some of those running backs.
All right, Matt, let's assume that the benchmark is to make a bowl in year 2 of the Scott Frost era. The schedule, those first 7 games, you've got a couple of like cupcakes in Bethune-Cookman and Georgia State, but then at Pitt, sandwiched in between. And then your first 4 Big 12 games are TCU at home, at Houston, at Oklahoma State, and then BYU. Like, realistically, what's the number in those first 7 games to feel like, okay, we can still hit our benchmark and still have a really nice year?
Well, you'd like to get to 4. You'd like to get to 4 wins and those first 7 games if you can. Maybe get to 5 if you can. I mean, to me, I think that Pitt game's going to be interesting. Second week of the season. It's kind of my trap game, so to speak. They've struggled on the road. UCF has struggled on the road the last few seasons. It's something that they've got to do better at. They've got to be able to get away from Orlando and win some games, especially in the Big 12 conference. They've really struggled on the road there. But if you come out and let's say you're 3-0 in your non-conference schedule. And then you've got maybe an opportunity to go out there and maybe do some things. I know Oklahoma State is rebuilding, but it's at Oklahoma State. That's going to be a challenge. Houston is getting better under Willie Fritz. They got to go there as well. They haven't been there in a while. That's going to be a challenge for them. TCU is obviously what they've gotten. And then you mentioned they get a bye week after Oklahoma State, and then they go and play BYU. And BYU is obviously one of the top teams in the conference. So you'd like to go into that bye week feeling really good about yourself, maybe having 3 or 4 wins under your belt, with an opportunity maybe to kind of finish strong. I mean, they finish out with Iowa State at home and then Colorado, and 2 teams that are probably going to they're still struggling a little bit. So there is an opportunity maybe to pick up some of those games. They don't want to get into a situation, which has been the last couple of years, where you get down to that second or last game of the season and you need a win to be bowl eligible. I think they'd like to avoid that if they possibly could. But this is not a cupcake schedule for them, so they understand they're going to have to find some wins, especially on the road.
Matt Murschel, Orlando Sentinel. Matt, you're the best, buddy, even though you're a Cub fan. Appreciate you.
I appreciate you. Go Cubs, right?
You got to figure out Pete Crow Armstrong. I don't know. He's not been good since that White Sox series. All right, I digress. We're talking to UCF. Matt Murschel joining us here in our Road to Arlington series, breaking down UCF football. We've got Kansas tomorrow for the Road to Arlington as we continue here. James Westling, Ari Temkin. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. On the way next, we've got Let's Get It On. And we're still going to be debating Brendan Sorsby starting game 1. It's Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio.
Wickman look in that direction and it's picked off. UCF with the interception. It's Philip Dunham out past the 45.
UCF shows pressure. Down goes Martin in the backfield. Philip Dunham at the tackle from the safety spot.
Blitz coming by UCF. Wickman has to get rid of it. Throws a pick. Another pick. And another pick 6. It's Philip Dunham doing it.
To get to about the 6-yard line to extend the drive, and they cannot. Philip Dunham, who has a sack and now a pass breakup, gave the play this afternoon.
Wickman throwing on second down, looking for Thomas. He's picked off. It's Dunham again. His 3rd interception of the game.
And a pick in the first quarter and a pick 6. Here's Dunham again. He's the leader on the back end for the Knights.
He's having costly times for
Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. There is a quadruple header of baseball, the quarterfinals of the Big 12 baseball tournament from Surprise Stadium in Surprise, Arizona, the spring training home of the Texas Rangers. And those games start at 11 a.m. Central today and go all the way through 10 o'clock first pitch tonight Central between Arizona State and Cincinnati. Should be a lot of fun. Both Kansas and Kansas State in action tonight in baseball. Your alma mater, my alma mater. And then, of course, we've got Super Regionals as well. 4 Big 12 teams in action tonight and through the weekend in the Super Regionals. Plenty more to come on that. But it's time now for a little Let's Get It On.
Let's get it on!
Thank you, Bills. Here's our producer, Taman Turner. Taman?
All right, fellas. I don't know if you guys know this, but Texas Tech has this quarterback thing, Brendan Sorsby, Will Hammond. Anyway, it had me thinking, who has a higher chance at being the starting quarterback on the home opener? Will it be Brendan Sorsby or Will Hammond?
This is week 1.
Yes, against Abilene Christian.
Who starts week 1, James? Will Hammond or Brendan Sorsby? You can have first crack at it.
Okay. Neither. I know it's a big deal. It's a bold take. Because the starter, week 1, will be Lloyd Jones III. Will Hammond, Lloyd Jones III.
There's been 2 other Lloyd Joneses?
Yeah, this is a third Lloyd Jones. 6'4", 215-pound redshirt freshman, currently battling it out with Tulsa transfer Kirk Francis for that third quarterback spot on the depth chart. So he redshirted last year, but he did play in a game. He spent the first half of the season recovering from a knee injury that he suffered in high school. But he was a scout team star, and the Texas Tech coaches were so confident, they put him in the game against West Virginia. Now, they had a big lead, but he shined. He went 4 for 5 passing, had 74 yards, and 2 touchdowns in that game, both to who I believe could be a breakout star at wide receiver, Micah Hudson. So Lloyd Jones III is my pick to be their starter. He was a 4-star recruit out of high school, listed as an athlete, could have played multiple positions. They're confident with him at quarterback. I think he's the guy at that position nobody's talking about. So I'm going week 1. Week 1, Abilene Christian, Lloyd Jones III, number 10, comes out of that tunnel as the QB.
I have no idea who that is, and Lloyd Jones III is never going to see the field for Texas Tech this year. Either will Lloyd Jones IV, or Lloyd Jones V, or Lloyd Jones VI. None of those guys are going to see the field this year. It's Brendan Sorsby, man. Sorsby's going to start. I know it looks grim, but again, the Jeffrey Kessler hire, the fact that Kessler took this on, he's got some aces up his sleeve, if you will. And, like the SEC and the Big Ten have just basically said, hey, NCAA rules, we don't really agree with those. So this also falls in line with that. The whole not agreeing with NCAA rules thing. So, plus, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Hammond won't be ready, but it won't matter because Sorsby will be starting day 1. He may face a suspension, but I'm putting my money, see that, on Brendan Sorsby starting game 1.
I just have to thank Ari for actually answering the question because I said who has a higher chance.
Yeah.
And then James says Lloyd Jones III.
I was very put off by the question.
Well,
so Lloyd Jones III. Now, I if this was week 3, my answer would be different, but it's week 1.
All right, next question, and I'm actually very curious to see what James has to say about this. So, Big 12 baseball tournament's going on. Who will win the Big 12 baseball tournament? The 2 favorites, Kansas or West Virginia?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Kansas here as I'm the first to answer this, but I knew you were going to go West Virginia anyway, so it doesn't make a difference. I think both of these teams still have a lot to play for, but Kansas maybe more so in order to host a regional and maybe also a super regional. That may be difficult for West Virginia at this point, but Kansas, if they win the Big 12 tournament championship, I think they're very much in line from an RPI perspective of not only hosting a regional, but hosting a super regional, which would be humongous. So I think just the motivation of something to play for. And look, this team kind of like meandered to the finish line. Like they were in complete control of the Big 12. They get swept by West Virginia, then have to at least win 1 against BYU in order to clinch the Big 12 championship crown, which they did. And it feels like they're pushed to the edge, but now they've got all the pressure off. And so they're ready to take over here within the Big 12 tournament. So I've got Kansas winning the whole thing.
Well, if West Virginia can get past the Kansas State Wildcats and be in a position to play for a Big 12 championship, my pick would be West Virginia because in this one-game tournament scenario that's played out there in Arizona, and I'm not even really taking a ton based off of the fact that West Virginia just swept KU, like, into consideration. I look more at just, I'm taking the defense. Steve Saban's told us just the other day it's the best defense that he's coached in 11 years. They have the fastest player in all of baseball playing first base. They have a fielding position percentage that leads the Big 12 by a huge margin. They have the fewest errors in the league by 9. 33 errors. The next closest team has 42. Like, they just don't make mistakes. They have a very deep, 2 big lefties in their rotation. So I think getting to that championship finale with the wear and tear of the arms that we could see in the Big 12 tournament, just it's the hot bats of KU versus the defense of West Virginia. And just in that scenario, I still lean the Mountaineers.
Yeah, BYU had the 3rd best defense in the Big 12. How'd that go for them?
They had an 8-6 lead.
And then had 4 errors.
Until they had some errors.
3rd best defense in the league.
West Virginia ain't BYU, bro. Country roads, you take me home.
All I have to say is I'm glad that you gave K-State some love, because if you didn't, knowing they're playing West Virginia today, I would have called you out.
Yeah, you ever heard of the term Batcats, Taman?
Yeah, there they go.
Okay, it's a thing.
All right, next topic.
They wear these sick throwback uniforms that look a lot like the shirt that Ari has on. Just says Cats.
Yeah, they stole it from the White Sox.
Did they?
Yeah.
I mean, the White Sox are the only team I've ever seen rocking anything like that.
I actually like the shirt. I didn't know that was a White Sox shirt until you told Matt that, but that's pretty dope.
What did you think it was?
I
says
didn't.
socks on
I
the
just,
front.
it just didn't click. It didn't dawn on me that it was a White Sox shirt. All right, next topic. Softball Super Regionals start today, and I thought of this question: who will pitch better in the Super Regionals? Will it be Ruby Malin, I should say, of Oklahoma State, or will it be Nigel Kennedy of Texas Tech, who did struggle in her last outing?
So, this is a really interesting question, and I like it. Do you lean more, does the pitcher have the advantage facing a familiar opponent versus playing somebody completely new? Like Nija's taking on Florida. Nija and Florida have zero connection, but Malin pitched against Nebraska earlier this year. Oklahoma State won the game in 11 innings. I'm going to go Malin, kind of the wild card here. She pitched 10 innings of 1-run softball, allowed just 8 hits, had 9 strikeouts, threw 137 pitches, and she's on an absolute heater. She's won her last 16 starts, kept Nebraska to just 1 run on 137 pitches. And when you look at her stats, like 22 complete games, she's pitched 238 innings, like the workhorse of not just the Big 12, but the entire country. First-team All-American. They're both outstanding, but I'm going to go Malin just because of the familiarity that I actually think is going to help her and her confidence, which is where Kennedy is struggling after she got roughed up against Ole Miss. So I'm going Malin here from Oklahoma State.
You're leaving me the face of softball here? Like, you had the option to take Kennedy, and you're like, no. I'll defer and let Ari argue on behalf of the best pitcher.
I'm a team player. You can have MJ. It's fine.
Yeah, sure. I'll take the best pitcher in college softball over the last 2 seasons. Yeah, just a modest 22-5 record with a 1.24 ERA. Oh, and by the way, she's far fresher this year because Caitlin Terry, who transferred over from UCLA, is 22-1 with a 1.30 ERA, which helped keep some of the mileage off for Kennedy. Look, there's been a little bit of ups and downs and some bumps in the roads for Kennedy this season. I get it, but all roads lead to this path. And Kennedy took over in the postseason at this part last year, and now she does it in a much fresher spot for her. This is an easy answer here. It's Nigel Kennedy, and I can't believe you left her for me.
Yeah, I actually agree with Ari on that one.
Let this man
Ruby
eat.
Malin's a beast, though.
Let him eat. Let the big dog eat.
Let me cook.
Let him cook. All right, this should
That's
be
what the kids are saying. It used to be let him eat. Now it's let him cook.
Just eat his way.
You got to cook before you eat, James.
It's confusing because you can say you're cooked, which is like the total opposite.
It's a lot of confusing sayings. I'm constantly asking my kids what the hell they're talking about.
Let
felt
Ari
older.
cook.
Sigma.
All right, so Ari thinks that Brendan Sorsby is playing this season. He's good to go. So it had me thinking, who will have the better offense this season? Will it be Texas Tech, Brendan Sorsby led, or will it be Oklahoma State led by Drew Mestamaker?
So Texas Tech had the #1 offense in the Big 12 last year. And it had a quarterback that didn't show out very well in the Orange Bowl. They've upgraded the quarterback position, returned their entire running back room, returned some offensive linemen, and NFL tight end and Terrence Carter. The answer here is obviously Texas Tech. I mean, my opponent will say Oklahoma State, not just because he has to, but because he loves the flashy new stuff. He's all about Oklahoma State. That's why he picked Ruby Malin. My opponent doesn't realize that North Texas is not in the Big 12. This is not the American Athletic Conference. Just ask UCF, who dominated the American Athletic Conference, and they've won 7 whopping Big 12 football games in 3 seasons.
Let's get it on!
That's some shade to UCF right there, and some shade to my colleague here, James Wessling. The answer is not just Texas Tech. It's overwhelmingly Texas Tech, James.
Ari chose violence.
That was shots fired, man.
I'm choosing the high road, Taman, because the answer is clearly Oklahoma State, okay?
James, the high road Wessling.
North Texas, it's not like this was a one-year thing. 2023, when they won 6 games, they still had a top 6 offense in the country. 2024, they had a top 3 offense in the country. Last year,
you and I could have a top 3 offense in the AAC. Come on.
They could stop some people from time to time, which is why they won 10 games. UCF in 2017, did they have an NFL quarterback?
No.
No, they didn't. Oklahoma State's got one. Drew Mestemaker is going to be a first-round NFL draft pick. So they've got the highest-rated, according to the league, quarterback in the Big 12 in Drew Mestemaker. So I don't care if they're playing the Topeka YMCA. They're still going to be putting up 400, 500, 600 yards of total offense week in and week out.
James, they've been playing the Topeka YMCA.
Did you watch the Orange Bowl? They didn't score, Ari.
And they have a better quarterback
Not
now.
A point. Like what? The answer is clearly Oklahoma State. Now, can they stop?
I was at the Orange Bowl, James. I saw it.
I have to agree with James on this one. I like the shiny toy. I like
you would.
Eric Morris.
Nobody asked you,
he
Taman.
Patrick Mahomes. I mean, the guy knows quarterback.
Listen,
Eric Morris knows quarterback.
Don't you realize, Taman, if you agree with me, I let you run. if you don't, it's nobody asked you.
Mestemaker, Mahomes, Mayfield, Mateer. What do they all have in common?
M's.
Eric.
M last names. That's it. Yeah.
Eric Morris. What is with these M's?
Yeah.
Who's the next M last name to be the best quarterback for Eric Morris?
McWilliams.
Chandler Morris? What the heck's going on here?
Yeah, Chandler Morris. He was a dude. He was pretty good.
All right, last topic, guys. This should be a fun one. So there's all this talk of expansion for college football, all this talk of expansion for college basketball. So I have to ask, what will be more fun to watch, an expanded college football playoff or an expanded NCAA tournament?
I really want to go first here.
Well, which one do you want?
No, go ahead. You got to go by the order.
Let's get it on!
Dude, I like them both. I don't know. College basketball. March Madness. The NCAA tournament. You wanted football? More football? Football's America's sport? No. Give me March Madness. March Madness, to me, is the #1 greatest event in college sports or any sport. I get more into March Madness than I do the Super Bowl, even when the Chiefs are playing in that game. More teams, closer games. Now, we had a little bit of a run where there weren't as many Cinderellas, but the Cinderellas will look different because they'll be hot. They'll be coming out of those play-in games. We've got 12 now. Every year since the inception of the play-in game, one of those teams that wins that pod wins the next game. This year it was Texas. They beat BYU. So more opportunity for 11 seeds and 12 seeds and 13 seeds to sneak through. I'm here for that. And college basketball is thriving right now. Less guys to the NBA, more talent in the tournament. I'll take March Madness. It's more exciting.
Wow, I know you went to K-State, but I didn't know you were in love with the NIT like that. Because that's essentially what
CBI.
That's essentially what we're getting here with some of these first-round matchups now. Hey, if you like the NIT, have I got news for you? No, are you kidding? This answer is clearly the 2014 playoff. Think about all of those home playoff games you're going to get. Are you kidding me? Provo at night in a playoff game? That place is going to be moving. Yeah. Obviously, the answer was not more basketball games, so the NCAA could try to make more money to fight more lawsuits in court that they're going to continue to lose. They're trying to find money in the couch cushions here. Let's expand the tournament. I bet you they expand the tournament to 90 teams next year because more lawsuits. They need more money, James. No. Give me the 2014 playoff. Plenty of home playoff games that are going to be really exciting. It's It's going to be amazing, electric, fantastic. It's an obvious answer here.
Dude, I cannot wait for that 13-7 thriller between Penn State and Boise State. Give me Ole Miss by 60 over Tulane.
In Happy Valley, it's going to be a joy.
Oregon and James Madison? Yes, said everybody.
The 2014 playoff gets K-State a home playoff game. Can't believe you're not in for that.
Dude, K-State just got a new light system, LED, all purple nights in Manhattan. It's going to be electric.
Max Olson from ESPN is next. It's Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn, watched on Big 12 Studios.
Play fake. Hammond, sideline, back shoulder. Virgil twist to grab it. And in a hurry, Texas Tech is right in front of Arizona State.
6 on the left-hand side, starting his 50th game this afternoon. Looking long, it's Virgil. He's got it inside the 15. He beat Henderson again.
Defenders, they do a good job there.
Reverse, Virgil. Reverse. There goes Virgil. Oh yeah, a hop, skip, and a jump touchdown.
Wouldn't be on
State forcing 3rd and 12. Hammonds throws over the middle, completes it to Reggie Virgil. Virgil's got the first down, still on his feet. And Virgil is going to take it inside the 35.
Goal. Morton with all kinds of time.
Virgil!
Reggie! Oh my goodness, what's happened to Virgil today?
Hammond did throw it up top again. Now they're showing off. Touchdown, Reggie Virgil.
Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. So pleased to be joined right now by Max Olson, now a National College Football and Transfer Portal reporter for ESPN. Max, how are you?
I'm good. Good to be on with you guys.
Yeah, appreciate your time as always. Last week we talked about your piece centered on Eric Morris at Oklahoma State and some really, really fun and interesting anecdotes. The one I loved the most was basically picturing Morris and Raj Murdy, their GM, at an Airbnb in Stillwater with pizza boxes all over the floor, putting together a Big 12 roster here that many pick to be far better than what they've been the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's a wild time. We've seen like the blueprint of this in the past few years is obviously evolving with NIL and the portal and all that. Obviously, what Deion Sanders did at Colorado a few years ago was a big sign of like, hey, you can just walk into a place and say, I don't need these old guys, and bring in a whole batch of a whole new crew of a roster and get things turned around. Haven't really seen anything I can compare Oklahoma State to, though. They're at 87 new players for this year, and after picking up 2 more this weekend. Certainly most starts and most career snaps added of anybody in the Power 4 this offseason. And to be honest with you, yeah, like if you spend a day with that staff, you kind of start to believe that, like, man, why couldn't they go win 9 or 10 games in year one if they can get a full season out of Drew Messmaker and he takes the next step? I mean, you start with that and the ability to score a ton of points. They've done that at North Texas every year, even as the QB has changed every year, even as their playmakers have gone into the portal every year. They just keep scoring, and so I think they come into the Big 12 and feel like they have a chance to really enjoy instant success and be a contender, which would be a wild thing to see coming off of 1-11.
And Max, I think with Oklahoma State, like, people see all the North Texas transplants and think this is just North Texas. But when you bring in 80-some new players, it's not just North Texas. So, I saw that, I think it was Wyatt Young that mentioned the Indiana way. Like, how would you break down their roster construction and kind of debunk the myth that it's just North Texas guys?
Yeah, I think there's similarities to what Indiana did in when Kurt Cincinnati went from James Madison to the Big Ten. They were able to bring like around 20 players from North Texas to Stillwater, and that includes a couple players who had been with them at North Texas, had transferred elsewhere, and then wanted to come back and reunite with them. And I think that, when you talk to those guys, like, they were in the mix for Arkansas and Auburn and some of these other jobs. And I think one thing they liked about Oklahoma State is you're going to the Big 12. You feel like you can take these guys with you into this conference and you feel like they can be starters and be successful. And you didn't have to leave a bunch of guys behind and play all these politics and stuff like that at a different school. And so they brought that crew with them. And obviously that's a lot of guys with starting experience and guys that are going to be plug and play starters, especially on offense. You've got the one of the best young running backs in the country in Caleb Hawkins. You have Wyatt Young, who was a 1,200-yard receiver last year. These guys are all sophomores too, so that's part of it. Like the upside here is pretty exciting that they're going to get multiple years with these players. And as long as Drew Messmaker's not a first-round pick this year, then you get another year from him. But from there, there was no spring portal this year, so you had to get all this done in a 2-week window and really had to rebuild an entire roster in 10 weeks at Oklahoma State. And you just had to say, like, all right, hopefully we've grabbed enough supplies for the journey ahead here, because you just don't really get another chance to go turn this roster over again in the spring like we've seen in previous years. And so you're recruiting a lot of players that have Power 4 experience. They kept some Oklahoma State players. I think it's around 20 or 25. But for the most part, it was having to just build your depth from scratch from the portal, and hopefully you kind of find the right body types for your systems, and hopefully you've got the right offensive lineman and defensive lineman, because that's obviously going to be a big jump for this staff and coming into the Big 12 from the American. But that's the experimental piece to me that I think is going to be really intriguing to watch. Is just, yes, they've got the star power, but can you get it right in terms of the depth and enough competitive depth to really catch up to everybody else in the Big 12?
Max Olson, one of the best in the business, joining us here from ESPN on Big 12 today. Speaking of Oklahoma State, pretty big softball game tonight in Lincoln, Max. You
That's
dialed
right.
in?
Nebraska's a softball school, they're a baseball school. That's right. It's a volleyball school.
Not
it's a basketball school. It's a lot of you checking all the boxes except for one.
Yeah, well said. Let's talk about just the portal in general. I know over the years, whether at a different publication or at ESPN.com, you've done a great job of deep diving the research on the portal. Have you done that this year? And what are some of kind of the year-over-year trends that you've seen or noticed based on some of your reporting and the data that you've done?
Well, I mean, I'm the guy who put Brendan Sorsby #1 in our top 100 transfers this offseason. So I'm not an expert on everything, guys. But this was another I think the thing is like the money is changing this every year, and the money just keeps going up, and there's no change to that in sight, to be honest with you. Like there's no, there is no cap in terms of the way these schools are operating. It's sort of a money laundering operation in terms of trying to get third-party NIL money to these guys to go over the cap and pay them however much you need. And I think the cost for players, the cost for high school recruits is just exorbitant right now. And so, that has completely changed the way that these schools approach roster building. Obviously the players still have unlimited transfers, and so you're seeing a ton of turnover as you'd expect every year. But, I think the calculus for these GMs now is really tricky because you are paying a premium for every player at every position, and even if they're depth, I mean, there's always somebody else that can come in and offer you more. And so I think it's been really challenging for these staffs to, you have a need and you only have 2 windows to go meet all of those needs, or 2 weeks to meet all of those needs. Certainly the trends are holding that we've seen in the past years, right? Like group of 5 players want to transfer up. Certainly you have a ton of just the best players in FCS, the best players in Group of 5 are moving up and making a lot more money, and that's just the economics of how this is now. But I still think a lot of people look at this and say like, all right, whoever has the most money is going to build the best portal classes, is going to build the best rosters. But I think with Oklahoma State and some of these schools that are trying different stuff this year, I still think there's an ability to moneyball this and find undervalued players and really I think we saw it with Texas Tech. Texas Tech obviously cut a lot of big checks last year, but their hit rate on the players they took last year was incredible. And I think that, if you can have the right processes and you can have enough money, you can change your fate very quickly in this sport.
Yeah, well said with the hit rate. Totally makes sense. Max, who do you think is the most underrated portal class in the Big 12? So not Texas Tech or Oklahoma State. Who's the portal class that you think is going to have a high hit rate that people are sleeping on?
Well, an interesting one. So I haven't put this out yet, but one thing I like to put out now is the norm now is that you're taking a portal class of 20 or 25 or 30 guys, even if you're not in year one, right? And so, one thing I like to put together is, okay, so who brought in the most Division I experience in terms of starts and snaps to their roster this offseason? Oklahoma State, far and away #1, as you would expect. They've brought in 499 career Division I starts to their roster out of the 60+ transfers. #2 on that list right now in terms of the snaps added is actually Colorado. And I don't know that Colorado got a lot of buzz as being one of the best portal classes in the country, but they did a pretty damn good job of going out and getting, that's the norm at Colorado, right? Is building a strong portal class, totally replenishing the 2 deep with transfer players. And obviously it's a strong destination in players' eyes. They want to go to Colorado, but they had some high profile wide receivers. Danny Scudero from San Jose State, one of the leading receivers in the country last year. DeAndre Moore from Texas coming in. I think he's going to be really productive. Cam Perry from Miami, Ohio. But the thing that people probably don't notice is offensive line, defensive line. They brought in a ton of experience. They really reloaded there, as they have every year, but I like what they picked up. I really like the running backs they brought in, Leona Lafau, or the linebackers they brought in, Leona Lafau from Texas and Gideon Lamprun from Bowling Green. They found a lot of good players in the secondary. Like I think Colorado is the sneaky one there in terms of, man, they may have kind of, if Julian Lewis can take a big step, obviously a lot of things have to go right with their returning players. But so, usually the emphasis, the focus is on what Colorado's lost in the portal. But man, they added a ton this offseason, and I wouldn't be surprised if they get right back to being a contender in this conference.
Talk with Max Olson here. Max, you mentioned this earlier about Sorsby. I think he's going to play this year. What's your opinion on it?
Yeah, I think I think there's a real possibility of that. I think there's still very much a possibility that he ends up entering the NFL supplemental draft here this summer, and that he and his camp look at this and just say, how do we protect our value and have the best chance to, if you're getting positive feedback that you're going to be a second round or third round guy by going that route. I still wonder if, as we go through all these steps, if that isn't sort of the way to escape all this. But I know, in talking to folks at Texas Tech, I think Brendan Sorsby feels very bad about all this. He feels very obligated to try to make this work and try to come back to Texas Tech. And really interesting development this week with taking this to court. Obviously, before the NCAA has completed an investigation, Brendan Sorsby offered to take a 2-game suspension. NCAA was not good with that. You've seen Trinidad Chambliss, you've seen Owen Heineke, you've seen some of these cases go to court and be pretty favorable for the school. It's a really tough one to prognosticate right now, but certainly I think there's a possibility that Brendan Sorsby is playing for Texas Tech, maybe missing some games, but playing for Texas Tech. And to be honest with you guys, I think that leads to an interesting discussion of, okay, let's say Brendan Sorsby plays all 12 games for Texas Tech. Like, how are people going to feel about that? Like, how are Big 12 coaches, how are coaches across the country going to feel? It reminds me of the Alabama basketball case in the spring a little bit of, are people, really going to be opposed to this and be very vocal that, that this is wrong and that, these gambling rules are fair and need to be upheld?
Well, it's a really unique situation, and it also kind of adds to what you wrote about just the other day. Has the college football transfer portal killed quarterback competitions? And you highlighted Arizona State in there. So can you answer that question for us?
I think the question as to whether the portal's killing competitions?
Yes.
Or who's the guy at Arizona State?
The first one. Has the transfer portal killed quarterback competitions?
I think for a lot of programs it has. I think that, again, going back to the price point of this stuff, a lot of times when you're having an off-season quarterback competition, it's because you've got 2 inexperienced options and you're trying to figure out what's the best path for your program. And nowadays, these programs just don't want to risk that. They don't want to go through an off-season and say, okay, well, what if by the time we get to the end of fall camp, our best guy is not good enough? And so, you're going to go look for experience in the portal. The crop of quarterbacks that goes in every year is an impressive one. And, if you're going to go pay for experience, it's going to cost you $2 million, $3 million at least. And so if you're cutting a check to a guy like that, then no matter what you're saying in the press conference, that guy's going to start for you, right? You can say you want a competition and iron sharpens iron and all that stuff. But the cost now of going out to get a big time player is just so high that, I think, I think we all know how these go. And so, the players have to make a decision because there's only one portal window now. There's no spring transfer window. The players have to make that decision in January. Can I win this job or do I need to leave? And they are leaving. And so there are still some quarterback battles out there, certainly a few in the Big 12. I think Arizona State's a really intriguing one because I think Arizona State's got great options. And I think they feel really, you didn't see Kenny Dillingham come out and say, boo-hoo about Sam Leavitt going in the portal. He thanked him and he kept it moving because he knew he could go out and get a really good player at that position. And they got Cutter Bully from Kentucky, but I think the true freshman coming in, Jake Fett, has a chance to win the job too. So I think, for some of these, you've got 2 really good options and you're excited to see kind of how the battle plays out. But for most of these schools, you only got one, and it's hard to keep a backup around and go through a battle and just stay and be depth.
Max Olson, ESPN.com. Max, you're the best. Appreciate your time as always, man. We'll see you soon. Take care.
Hey, thanks so much.
Max Olson joining us here on Big 12 Radio. He lives in Lincoln. That's why I mentioned the Oklahoma State, Nebraska super regional for softball, but I loved his answer. Baseball, softball, volleyball, just not football.
I mean, football is 2-27 against top 25 teams the last 5 years. It's fine. I mean, there is one other school that has a worse record during that stint against top 25 teams. And that would be the powerhouse of Rutgers. Those are facts.
That's James Westling. I am Ari Tepkin. It's Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo. Heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios.
Now third down. Ball is out. That whole thing just exploded. And Romello Height recovers it.
First down. Jackson run down from behind. Romello Height is another one. Call it the dog position. Well, he is
Texas. Look out here. You wanted them to be aggressive, but there's only so much you can do, and Romello Height is knocking on your door.
Last far better.
Even as the QB has changed every year, and be depth.
Max Olson, ESPN.com. Max, you're the best. Appreciate your time as always, man. We'll see you soon. Take care.
Hey, thanks so much.
Max Olson joining us here on Big 12 Radio. Max Olson, ESPN.com. Max, you're the best. Appreciate your time as always, man. We'll see you soon. Take care.
Hey, thanks so much.
You're listening. Yeah, so
Thanks so much.
I've been becoming more active in the Big 12 subreddit, and so today I posted about, like, has anybody ever heard of Big 12 Radio? Did you
do it like?
No, I did it as I'm Ari Temkin.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay. That's genius.
One guy said Sun Devil Nation loves the show. There's a few people that hadn't heard of it. And then this one guy says, hell yeah, Ari, I listen every day on my drive to work. You, James, and T-Chains. I just assumed it has a Z. I've never even seen it spelt. I said, your guess is as good as mine.
That's amazing. All right, what is the subreddit? Just Big 12?
Big 12.
This one?
That's it.
Dude, what?
I used to love to anonymously go to Reddit threads that would, like, talk shit about me. It was fucking the best.
Really?
I miss that shit, yeah. Hook it straight in my veins.
This is the Big 12. This is a different league.
I'm Commissioner York.
Big 12 Radio, James Westling, Ari Temkin, on social at James Westling, at Ari Sports. And if you've not yet already downloaded the TuneIn app, I would encourage you to do so, because we talk about all the sports here on Big 12 Radio, but football season never sleeps. And we have been juiced up with football content throughout the offseason. We've run a ton of different series throughout the offseason. We're in the middle of the road to Arlington, which is a deep dive breakdown of each team. We've got Kansas tomorrow. We did UCF today, but we've done the top 5 newcomers to the Big 12 at every position. We did the top 5 players at every position. We did a post-spring wrap, and you can hear much of those series that we've done as a part of TuneIn. Just download the TuneIn app and search Big 12 Radio. In fact, For today, we've got our Big 12 Power Hour following the replay of Big 12 today at 1 o'clock Central, 2 o'clock Eastern Time, which will be our spring preview of Cincinnati. And then our interview of the day is the one we just did with Max Olson. All of that is part of our Big 12 Power Hour today at 1 o'clock. Plus, you get the best at each position series today. That's at 3 o'clock Central. Take a look at the top 5 offensive linemen, the top 5 tight ends, and the top 5 wide receivers, which were very highly contested lists. That's at 3 o'clock Central today on TuneIn. And then Thursday's the road to Arlington, UCF. If you missed it earlier today, you can catch it at 4 o'clock Central. Is that 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock? Because it looks like we've got the best of each position series at both 3 o'clock. So is that 3 or 4?
The best at each position is at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central. The road to Arlington's 4 Eastern, 3 Central.
Got it.
My apologies.
No worries. That makes sense. So the Power Hour is at 1. The best at each position series, offensive line, tight end, wide receivers at 2. And then the road to Arlington, UCF is at 3 today. Got it.
I got it.
Awesome. So just download the app, search Big 12, and whenever you turn it on, there's going to be us, you and I, talking about something, most likely football. Maybe not. In fact, if you turn it on during the replay, right now, we're talking softball. Big 12 softball. 4 teams enter the Super Regional tonight. Texas Tech, UCF, Arizona State, and Oklahoma State. And so, it would be rare to read articles about softball, especially Big 12 softball, in a publication like The Athletic. But Lindsay Schnell, who covers softball for The Athletic, had a piece out last week. Texas Tech is college softball's new villain, and the Red Raiders don't care. And, I mean, some of this isn't surprising. We talked with Jerry Glasgow last week, and he basically said the reason we're not a high enough seed to host a Super Regional is because we got washed out. They were supposed to play their best RPI opponent was Florida State. They couldn't go to that game. Mm-hmm. There was weather issues, and so they couldn't travel for it, and nobody else was scheduled them. Glasgow said they placed tons of calls and couldn't get anybody to schedule them. So it's like everybody's conspired against Texas Tech, trying to help them raise their RPI, which would then allow them to host a Super Regional. So they are very much the villains of college softball. It's just funny, and we've talked about it a lot with Texas Tech. It's all fun and games and spending money until Texas Tech does it, right? It's all fun and games until the Big 12 starts spending money at the level of the SEC and the Big 10. And now it's not so funny.
And you could take the headline of this piece, Texas Tech is college softball's new villain, and replace football for softball,
Great
basketball
point.
for softball. Go down the line. Texas Tech is the new villain in all sports because they're spending in all sports. Now, I see the difference between softball and what they've done in football because football has been vilified. Brendan Sorsby has been vilified because it's Texas Tech and they're not Texas and Georgia and Ohio State, so it's not okay for them to spend money. The difference, I think, is Texas Tech football just got on the map because they were very selective in their transfer portal class last year.
Yeah.
Reggie Virgil was not a household name, okay? He transferred from Miami, Ohio. David Bailey transferred from Stanford after a losing season, right? Romello Height was on his 5th school in 5 years, transfer from Georgia Tech. When you look at Texas Tech softball, they add an All-American from Tennessee. They add an All-American from Florida. They add an All-American pitcher from UCLA. And they add the National Player of the Year in Nija 2 years ago from Stanford. So that would be the equivalent of like Texas Tech football going out and getting Alabama's starting quarterback or Georgia's best edge rusher. That's the difference. Like UCLA and Tennessee and Ohio State and Florida are big names, household names when it comes to softball. So they are grabbing players in the portal from these household blue blood programs who see Texas Tech as a tremendous opportunity. Whereas Texas Tech football, rather than go for a guy that's going to be a first-round NFL draft pick from Ohio State, they lean on NFL scouts to find a defensive tackle from Wake Forest, a cornerback who's now the best corner in the league from Mississippi State. Like, those are programs that aren't blue blood programs, but they're still really good players from those high pedigree leagues like the Big 12.
I also, if you go deep in this article, like there are coaches that are calling out Texas Tech for quote unquote tampering, and it's like one of the coaches is Tennessee's coach, and it's like, really, Tennessee? Like, Look in the mirror. I know you're not the football coach, but come on. Come on. Come on.
Dude, all the stuff we talk about with like everything that's happening in the NCAA, expansion, college football playoff, NIL transfer portal, the one like major hot topic that fans get so irate about that I couldn't care less about is tampering. Tampering is as easy as sending a text to a friend who's at another school saying, come play here.
Right.
Like, you cannot police tampering.
No. Even not police intent, and even more so to your point, like the conduits, the go-betweens.
Players are more accessible than ever before. Friend groups, social media, this digital age that we live in. Remember when Dabo Swinney at his press conference got on his high horse and was ranting about Ole Miss did this and Ole Miss did that, and they tried to steal one of our players?
Yes.
Like, where did that go? That was a headline for about 8 hours because everybody's doing it. There's no way to enforce it. The way to enforce it is to make sure that the players on your roster that you want to be your top 11 guys on offense and your top 11 guys on defense are happy with the locker room culture, they're making their market value, and they stay. So tampering's like the one thing that I think is a bunch of smoke.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so college softball tonight, Super Regionals, Oklahoma State, Nebraska. It's an 8 o'clock first pitch. You can catch it on ESPN2. And then tomorrow is where most of the action gets going, including a 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern time start in Gainesville between Texas Tech and Florida. Game 2 of the Nebraska-Oklahoma State series will be at 4 o'clock tomorrow. UCF and UCLA will be the nightcap at 8 o'clock, and Arizona State, Texas as well at 8 o'clock. Both ESPN2 has Arizona State, Texas, and ESPNU has UCF and UCLA. So softball getting going, and of course, you get baseball day today, a quadruple header of the quarterfinals of the Big 12 baseball tournament. Oklahoma State, UCF, Baylor, Kansas, Kansas State, West Virginia, and Cincinnati, Arizona State. I started to notice the pretty significant push by ESPN on the anti-24-team playoff train. I've seen multiple clips now. First, it was Booger McFarland talking about the 24-team playoff would be the equivalent of a participation trophy. Also, Josh Pate, who I think does a good job with 24/7 Sports, he is pretty polarizing. He goes in ESPN and basically says the same thing on Get Up. So there's a significant push right now by ESPN on the anti-24-team agenda. And again, like, people want to paint ESPN as the bad guy here for that, and I think it's important to see both sides in the motivational piece. ESPN doesn't want a 24-team playoff because they don't want to give up their exclusivity of the playoff. That makes sense. Fox wants in on the playoff, so they want a 24-team playoff. Who's the bad guy here, right? Like, I can understand both's motivation. I'm not painting either to be the bad guy. ESPN is just getting behind, its behemoth of a PR campaign to basically push that the 24-team playoff would suck.
Wait, ESPN has PR campaigns? Like Miami getting into the college football playoff over BYU?
No.
That didn't happen. Notre Dame being left out too because all their games are on NBC? No. That doesn't happen. That doesn't happen, guys. That doesn't happen.
No.
Using a 24-team playoff model, the Big Ten deputy commissioner, who is, the way I understand it, kind of their equivalent of the Big 12 Scott Draper. So he said at their meetings, which are taking place now, that 80 different teams would have made the playoffs using the 24-team model dating back to 2014. 80 teams. And
participation trophy, James.
Participation trophy, or my mind goes to now 2014 is the cutoff year, so I can't say 2012 Kansas State or 2011 Oklahoma State, which got left out. But 2014, I can use
Baylor.
The Trayvon Boykin TCU team. I can use the Bryce Petty, who was with us a couple of weeks ago and will be with us in studio this fall from time to time. The Baylor quarterback, that Baylor team that he spearheaded. And even teams since then, like Kansas State's been, Iowa State had a team that many believe after watching them take down Cam Ward in Miami in the Pop-Tarts Bowl would have been in the conversation. You would have had BYU in, like every year, it feels like, definitely the last two. And I'm thinking, okay, what Big 12 teams could have made some noise in the college football playoff if it's 24 teams? You know the one team last year, and they look very different now, but the one team last season that I would love to have seen is Utah. Utah's only losses were to Texas Tech when Devin Dampier was playing with one arm, and BYU, a nail-biter that went down to a holding call and a last-second field goal Utah, and the way they just dismantled Nebraska, with that offensive line and the way they were clicking towards the end of the year, they would have caused a lot of problems for teams in this playoff.
Yeah, it's a great point. Now, we had Brett Yormark sitting with us yesterday, asked him basically what it would take for the SEC to buy in the 2014 playoff, and he said money. More to the point, he said they've got to use modeling and get to work to figure out what the monetary benefits would be. And he didn't reference this, it wasn't about the SEC, it was more about the Big 12. But I think it's obvious the Big 12 has said publicly that they support a 2014 playoff, and the one entity that does not is ESPN and the SEC. And if you get if the money is so overwhelming for a 2014 playoff, you can't even. Greg Sankey can't even say no. Basically, is the idea here, because you're losing a ton of revenue, including the Big 12, without having a Big 12 or an SEC championship. That's where the rubber meets the road. Why does Fox and the Big 10 not care? Because they won in the playoff. That's it.
Yeah. Well, and if you want to tease our lead for tomorrow, I can tell you that it will be Fox wants a 2014 college football playoff. ESPN pushing back. No one knows who is paying. This is from The Athletic. It's a great breakdown of all the unanswered questions outside of the SEC versus the Big Ten and that power struggle that continues.
Yeah. Also, a story that kind of slipped under the radar here, but I have to mention, is that Ed Orgeron is back at LSU.
So glad you brought that up.
I mean, Lane Kiffin is amazing for bringing Ed Orgeron back in some capacity, but Coach O is back. LSU is extremely excited about it. Remember, Ed Orgeron and Lane Kiffin are good friends. In fact, when Kiffin was fired at USC, remember when they fired him on the jetway? Or was it on the bus, before the bus? Ed Orgeron became the interim head coach at USC, so he's been kind of his right-hand man at a different spot. So that should be a lot of fun. All right, a lot of fun. Our Road to Arlington series continues tomorrow with Kansas. If you missed today's UCF, you can hear it again at 4 o'clock Central, 5 o'clock Eastern time on TuneIn. Thanks, of course, to Anthony Smith, our producer with Big 12 Studios. Thanks to Taman T-Chains Turner, our producer with TuneIn. Thanks to James Wesley. I'm Ari Tepkin. Big 12 Today is back for a Friday show tomorrow. But for now, we're out. Peace.